Good morning, DJ and PK. It's 97.5 The Zone. And for people who like the NBA playoffs and like competitive postseason series, it is a good morning. Dallas Mavericks beat Oklahoma City. That series is tied 1-1. And the Celtics got destroyed at home by Cleveland. They were soundly thumped. So that series is now 1-1. I can't figure the Celtics out. They don't play close games in the playoffs. They went through Miami in 5 and now 2, so we're 7 games in. The closest game they played was 10 points, and most of them are in the 15 to 25 point range. And there's no thrillers here, and I find it a little befuddling that they just got dominated at home by Cleveland. And Cleveland was going to win a road game at some point. They were 0-4 on the road in the postseason, so now they're 1-4. You know, are they committed enough to defense? Are they good enough defensively? Defense travels. You got to defend to win on the road. Okay, so they're not a good road team because, they're not good enough defensively. But they're going to win one. And so they get it. But to blow Boston out, it's not like it was a 5-point loss. That was a dominating performance. All right, we're going to more on the playoffs, actually, and off-season news and what the Jazz might be able to do and what Donovan Mitchell's plans might be. Evolving, I think, is the first word. Brian Geltzeiler next, right here on The Zone. Good morning, DJ and PK, proudly presented by Murdoch Hyundai, Utah's #1 Hyundai dealer for 18 years in a row. We had Brian Geltzeiler on late in yesterday's show to talk about Donovan Mitchell's future, Lauri Markkanen's future, and why, either one of those guys' careers and their future employers, could go either way. And it's hard to know how things are going to break right now. Now, he did drop in a few last nights referring to a game that is now obviously 2 nights ago. But the bigger point is, where is Donovan Mitchell going to end up and where is Lauri Markkanen going to end up? Here's Brian Geltzeiler. Brian, good morning.
Good morning, gentlemen. How we doing?
We're doing well. We have a dilemma, and you are exactly the guy. You could be right in the middle of this. There are people
I like this.
We don't know, but we are curious what they're thinking because people are still following Donovan Mitchell here. What's he going to do? The assumption is he's going to New York. They can certainly manipulate their payroll and find a spot for him, make a trade, or wait and get him in free agents in a year. But the team's pretty good. Do you think the Knicks front office, I think they wanted to do it at one point, but do they want to do it now given how good the team is?
No, I don't think they want to do it at all. I don't think the Knicks go near Donovan Mitchell right now. I just don't. I think for the Knicks right now, the question becomes, it's the Randall spot, to me. That's the spot that you need to look at. What are you going to do in that spot? Who's going to be available that can help you there? You want a front court player. Right now, your backcourt's in great shape. Listen, there's such, there's a school, you look at team chemistry, right? I'm trying to get the right words out here. It matters. These Villanova guys playing together, there's a trust and a level of synergy that stretches beyond who Brunson and Hart and DiVincenzo are as individual players. So you don't want to break that up. So you bring in Donovan Mitchell, you're going to clearly break that up. And listen, here's the other thing. You look at how Donovan Mitchell has played with Garland. And it's really, listen, I like Darius Garland a lot as a player, and I'm not killing Donovan Mitchell here. It hasn't worked with the two of them. And I do think both of the guys are trying. I think they're trying very hard. They're both used to being on the ball, and it's becoming a big issue. So if I'm the Knicks here, man, right now they got a problem because this Anunoby injury, if he's out for the rest of this series, they got a chance to survive. If he's out for the rest of the playoffs, they're cooked because this is the critical mass injury. This is the guy that's doing so much on both ends. You saw him last night. He assumed the role as a lead scorer with Brunson out, which was absolutely awesome. But what he's done defensively has been off the charts. And the way he's guarded Siakam in these 2 games has been absolutely terrific. If you're going to have to guard Siakam for full games with Josh Hart and Precious Achiuwa, all due respect to both those players who've been terrific here for the Knicks, I think, this series is going to get a lot closer. Anunoby is a vital piece. Stan Van Gundy said this stat. His name is Brian Anderson in the broadcast. I think it's real important. 25-5 with Ochai Anunoby in the lineup. No joke, man. This guy's a heck of a player. So I kind of look at all this and feel like for Donovan Mitchell, it's a little bit of overkill, especially what the Knicks would have to give up for him.
Then what do you think Mitchell does? Because, the Cavs are up against it. If he doesn't extend and all that stuff, it seemed like he would go. And having lived back east, it's like if you don't go to New York, well, then you go to Miami. And, we've heard those rumors, but I don't think they're in any better position. So it seems like he's kind of caught if he's looking to find a place to gravy train a title.
Listen, Miami's got pieces for him. And then the other place that you hear with him is to go pair with Bridges in Brooklyn. It would be a better combination there, and they could make a trade with Cam Johnson as a lead piece and be able to still keep Claxton, and then they have all of Phoenix picks. So, Brooklyn, it makes no sense for them to go backwards because they don't have any of their own picks. So that's another situation if he wanted to be in New York that he could go seek out. Miami would make the most sense just because I know the stock of Jovic has risen significantly. We know that Vasquez is a very good player. And listen, if I'm Cleveland, maybe I would try to pair Rozier with Garland. But there's another school of thought here, which is that Mitchell actually does sign the extension. He turns around and says, you know what? Trade Garland for everything you can get for him. Sign Mobley and keep him here, and give me a new coach. And if all those things happen, because no one loves J.B. Bickerstaff there, and I actually think he's done a pretty damn good job there with all of the chaos that's happened, all the injuries. I think he's held up pretty well. But from that standpoint, I kind of feel like Mitchell may look at this situation in Cleveland and say, you know what, maybe staying here and having my run of the organization isn't my worst option.
Any chance he comes back to the West? LeBron's looking for good players, and LeBron's liked him forever, or any other landing spots, or no to the entire Western Conference?
No, I'm not saying no to the entire Western Conference. Listen, the Lakers have 3 picks to give. Is that something Cleveland's going to be interested in? I don't know. It's possible. It's certainly – listen, I think that Donovan Mitchell would move the needle for the Lakers, and the Lakers have not made a lot of deals that have moved the needle in the playoffs. They have the contract to send back, but the Lakers have 3 picks that are far in the future, and no one really knows if they're quality picks or not. So, that's a possibility, but you look at the rest of the West – and it comes up with who's going to really make that kind of deal for him. If you're Oklahoma City, what do you want to get involved there for? You got a great situation going. Minnesota's not adding another max player. Denver right now, Denver's got to build depth. They have their core in place. Start to look at some of these West teams. Phoenix is in a situation where, what do you think, you swap Durant out for him? I don't know that's no better fit than Durant. It's probably a worse fit than Durant. The Clippers, where are they going to be on this? They're not going with Donovan Mitchell. They're too small as it is. You start to, fire teams off here and realize that, there's not a ton of great fits. That's why I know, and I know the two of you guys, when I brought up Brooklyn, there may have been a scoffer and eye roll, and you're too respectful to do it on the air, and I appreciate that. But when you start to look at how quickly the suitors dwindle, okay, Brooklyn's somewhat viable with what they have to give and what would remain there once Mitchell came on board.
In his postseason press conference, Ainge says he wants to go, quote, big game hunting. What does that mean to you?
It means that if there is a star available that he thinks fits in with his young core, he will pony up some of his treasure chest of draft picks to be able to go get them. And possibly, and I keep saying this, and I hate it because I don't think it's necessarily the best thing or the right thing, but it would also depend upon the guy you bring back. Danny coming into the deadline, as much as they denied it, I can tell you on good authority, and I'm not the only one saying it or reporting it, that Danny shot Larry Markkinen. He had him out there a little bit. My point being is if Danny can go bring in a big-time star player, he would certainly do that. But, they don't want Donovan Mitchell back here.
Right.
That is something I will definitely tell you. That's not going to be the guy. But when Danny says big game hunting, he wants the Jazz fans to understand that asset accumulation phase is kind of going to graduate into roster building very, very shortly for the Jazz, and that's a good sign. That means you're making steps forward in the rebuild. So I don't mind Danny saying that because the Jazz have a lot. Jazz have a lot of assets. They got a lot of picks. They got a lot of good young players. I thought this year, especially the first half of the year, was a good year, and you saw some promise and some guys come along. So I don't think that that's a bad thing that Danny says that.
Well, when it comes to scoffing and eye rolling, I have heard that the problem in Brooklyn is their faith in the management team and the direction of the club, and they're just going into a chaotic situation that they don't know where they're going, and he's in his prime and can't waste time. As far as the marketing thing and the eye rolling, I 100% believe you. I don't know if your vocabulary was right on point, but I think they were. How about this? They were at minimum. They were actively listening. They are.
Yeah, they were entertaining. Maybe shopping's a strong word.
Right.
They were absolutely entertaining trading Larry Markkinen and having some discussions. When I say, and you're right, I'm glad you corrected my verbiage, because when I say shopping, I implied that they were out there trying to push him on teams. We got to get rid of him. We got to trade him. That's not the case at all. But they were exploring options about what can we get for him in the open market. They certainly were doing that. So it's something to keep in mind going forward, because I think there's going to be a lot of available big-time players in this offseason, and it's a lot of guys that aren't still playing in the playoffs. I wouldn't be surprised if we see Kevin Durant on the move. I don't know what's going to happen in Milwaukee. That's a situation that bears watching. Conventional thinking would have you believe that they're just going to bring this thing back, try to run a full season with Doc, maybe try to do some tweaks on the margins with the roster because they don't have a lot of options after the Lillard trade. But, who knows? Giannis has become a little bit of a loose cannon, and Dame Lillard had guys, what I like to call TPS syndrome this year in Milwaukee. This place sucks. He was visibly unhappy, and it affected his play. Now, some of it was a personal situation. Some of it was the fact that going from Portland to Milwaukee was frying pan into the fire, and it didn't work as well as he thought it was going to work. So you have to see what happens there. Listen, I think Embiid's happy with Maxey in Philly, but you never know there. This is the NBA. Stuff will happen that will surprise you. Pat Riley completely undressed Jimmy Butler in public earlier this week. Absolutely tore him to shreds. Was 100% right. And by the way, they're not going to give Butler a contract extension. They're probably not going to trade him. But could I see a scenario where Riley gets fed up because Butler turns around and starts to run his mouth publicly again? Who knows what happens in that situation as well. So Danny's essentially positioned himself for anything that can happen. And the Jazz, if they want a guy, they have enough to be front and center on any player being available.
A lot of Jazz fans wonder how long they have to wait for this rebuild. And I think the reason the Jazz were listening actively is that the timeline for Markkanen and the timeline for the rest of the roster, it doesn't exactly match up. Now, they could make a deal, and it could match up pretty well pretty quickly. But if they can't make a deal and they keep drafting young guys, suddenly Markkanen just isn't in the right age group. And I think Markkanen is very aware of that. Ainge was asked about an extension, and he didn't want to answer that at all. He just didn't want to. He said, I will say that Markkanen is a great, really good player, and we love having him here. But he didn't want to answer the extension. And Markkanen danced around the extension, too. So I think they're both aware of the timeline. Now, most players sign extensions, and you just mentioned Butler might not get one. Are there any other players that we're assuming are going to get extensions that maybe we should assume are in play? Because to move someone like Markkanen, you got to get a lot back, right? Who's out there, maybe?
Kevin Durant can get another extension here, and I don't think he is. I don't think that's going to happen. So I think that Durant is a really, really interesting piece because he can move the needle for a lot of teams. But when you talk timeline, he does not fit the Jazz timeline. The spot I would look for the Jazz is the New Orleans Pelicans. Brandon Ingram becomes an interesting guy because he's still only 27, and he did not have a good year this year. He spent a lot of time hurt. He definitely dropped his stock in how he handled USA basketball last year. He was asked to be a role player on the World Cup team, and he wasn't happy about it. And the guy that he kind of had to sit behind was Anthony Edwards. Well, who's proven themselves this season to be a guy that should have had the ball in his hands and a guy that should have been behind him? I think the way both those guys played bared out the decision Steve Kerr made to be the right decision. So Ingram's an interesting guy, but you make a lot of sense about Markkanen. Here's a fact about Larry Markkanen and the Jazz. Larry Markkanen has earned a big extension that the Jazz do not want to pay him. That's the bottom line, because the Jazz are looking at this salary-wise, and they want to stay as flexible as possible. If somebody comes available, they want to be able to pounce. If they turn around and give Markkanen what he has earned, and I want to be clear about that, if they give him an extension, it's not a gift. Larry's been great. He's played terrific for this team. And so a big extension would seem to be the logical progression for him. But I understand where Danny is. Danny's got, he's got to be Muhammad Ali, float like a butterfly, sting like a bee here, and be able to bounce and be flexible. Paying Markkanen the amount of money that Markkanen has earned is not going to maintain Danny's flexibility. So I think when you talk about Markkanen being dealt and not getting an extension, it's a very real possibility. But again, I don't think Durant's a fit. New Orleans is going to do something. David Griffin said it pretty much in his postseason press conference that this is not going to come back as the same group. And they got some really good young guys there. Trey Murphy, Zion showed you if you can keep him on the floor, they're going to build around him really well. I think guys like Ingram and McCollum and Valanciunas are guys that you could see on the move. But out of those three players, the only one that would even come close to fitting the Jazz's timeline is Brandon Ingram.
Are you surprised the allowance of the physicality in the Western Conference series between the Wolves and the Nuggets? Because it seems like, man, that really plays into Minnesota's hand.
Nope. But I will say this, and I think this is important to say. Shifting how referees on a broad-scale basis officiate games at the All-Star break is not a policy I would like to see the league repeat. And, guys, don't get me wrong. I love this kind of basketball. What we're seeing now, even the physicality in the Indiana-New York game last night, this is what basketball is. It's a physical contact sport. And what it was becoming, and these 70-point games we were seeing, and that craziness was not what the NBA should be. So the fact that Adam Silver made the shift I loved it from that standpoint. What I didn't love is shifting on the fly. Because what ends up happening is teams prepare in the off season, and I mean even to the point of personnel executives, getting players based upon one style of play and one set of rules the league is allowed, and then the league completely shifts gears on that, and teams are kind of stuck having to adjust on the fly, which is part of the deal. But for Minnesota, listen, this is how they play. This is how they've played all year. It's just that when the rules have allowed more, they've ended up being a lot better. And listen, right now they got that look. They got the look of a team that has everything you need to have to go win a championship. I give Chris Finch is doing an unbelievable coaching job there. Mike Inori, I know, is taking charge here over the last two games, but make no mistake about it, Finch has absolutely coached those games sitting there. So I love what Minnesota's done. They look great. With that said, in the other series, I don't think OKC could beat them in this series. I think Dallas could give them everything they can handle if they can manage to win this series.
What about Boston, if that ultimately is the final?
Listen, my favorite podcaster, Bill Simmons, has a saying about his Boston Celtics. He calls Kristaps Porzingis their superpower. He is 100% spot on about that. Porzingis is the guy that takes the Celtics from a very good team to a great team. We have to watch and see what happens with that situation when he's going to be back. It will not affect them in this series. Cleveland's not as connected as they should be. They're a little bit soft. Without Jarrett Allen, it becomes a little more difficult for them. I think Boston's fine in this series. And whether it's 5 or 6 or even a sweep or 4, Boston's surviving this series. The next series, it depends upon what the Knicks' injury status is. Without Anunoby, forget about it for the Knicks. But if the Knicks do have Anunoby back in a series against Boston, they'll give them everything they can handle, guys. They really will. The Celtics with Porzingis are the best team in the league. Without Porzingis, they can't beat Minnesota in a series. They can't. Now, again, if it's Dallas, again, without Porzingis, it may be tough. Dallas made 2 moves at the trade deadline. P.J. Washington and Daniel Gafford got themselves a lot bigger. With Gafford and Lively, they have 48 minutes of a 7-foot pogo stick, rim-protecting, lob-finishing center. And it means the world to them with having Luka and Kyrie in the backcourt. And those guys have defended better than they've ever defended in their careers, both of those players. Dallas is very, very tough. So I think Dallas could give Boston all they can handle without Kristaps Porzingis. So I think that's the other issue here. Again, it's all going to revolve around Porzingis. Here's one thing I will say, and no one is to blame for this. it just kind of stinks that we've seen the volume of injuries in the NBA this year in the playoffs that we have, especially in the Eastern Conference. Between Giannis and Milwaukee, Porzingis, you have the Knicks don't have Randall now, they don't have Anunoby, Miami, no Butler, like all of it. All of it is just, you wish you had everybody healthy and playing, because to me, that's where the league's at its best. But it is what it is. It's 82 games. It's a war of attrition. So we just kind of have to see what shakes out with all of it. But the injuries definitely mar what I think is a fantastic, fun playoff.
Brian, when I was a kid and we'd go down the hill from Parsippany to West Orange for Sunday dinner with my grandparents, we would drive, 280 wasn't built yet, so we would drive down the surface streets and we'd go by North Caldwell, and we always, even as a kid, I understood, up that long driveway, that's where the wise guys lived, which brings me to, can you believe that Sopranos is 25 years old this year?
So it's funny. I have a friend that lives around the corner from the Soprano house, and I was stopping by there the other day, and I have to tell you that there is never a time that I am in his neighborhood and going by his house that I don't swing into that cul-de-sac and take a look at that house, which still looks the same that it did when they did the show. They've really kept it up nicely, really has. And I got to tell you, it's unbelievable that it's been this long. It's unbelievable that it got the traction that it did with COVID, with a whole new generation of people just getting addicted to the show and loving the show. And it's really funny. So at the Wellmont Theater in Montclair, New Jersey, November 30th, they do this, a night with the Sopranos, where Michael Imperioli and Steve Sciarippa and Vinny Pastore stand up there with microphones. They tell stories. They answer questions. Well, one of my close friends, who's as big a Soprano act as I am, texted me a screenshot the other day. He got us third row meet and greets for that.
Oh, nice.
And I got to tell you, that's circled on my calendar. I can't wait. I happen to know Steve Sciarippa, and I have his number. So, Steve's been on my show before and is a wonderful guy. But getting to be there and do that. And I interviewed Michael Imperioli once. This is a funny story. I interviewed Imperioli in the SiriusXM studios. He was there promoting a book, and my producer was able to get him to sit down with me for 5 minutes. And I was so geeked up, I made a joke about stalking him. And now, to me, it was a joke. But Imperioli didn't know it was a joke. And he looked at me white as a ghost, okay? The rest of the questions of the interview were one-word answers, and get me the F out of here, guys. Who's this lunatic I'm sitting next to? So, the lesson, as always, fellas, you can dress me up, you can't take me anywhere.
He's Brian Geltzeiler. He's on SiriusXM, NBA Radio, and on NBA TV. Brian, as always, we love it. Thanks for coming on.
Always my pleasure, gentlemen. I'll talk to you guys soon. Take care.
DJ PK, it's 97.5 The Zone. He doesn't disappoint, and he can shift gears.
I know.
He was in hardcore NBA off-season move. This is what the Jazz could do. These are some of the possibilities. These are some of the calls. This is what Ainge is thinking. Yeah, so about that house. Nice.
But yeah, when we drove by, you knew that's where they lived, so that's why they put Tony in North Caldwell. I mean, as a kid, 30 years, 40 years before The Sopranos ever was created, we knew that's where they lived. And that's why I like that show, is because it just reminded me of my youth.
Takes you back home.
Yeah.
DJ and PK brought to you in part by Minky Couture. Make Mother's Day easy and get the best gift ever, a blanket or robe from Minky Couture. Mom will love it. Shop online at minkycouture.com or at any Minky store. They'll even take care of the wrapping. Even better, save 50% using the promo code ZONE50. It's the best gift ever. Minky Couture. When we come back, spring football tour continues. Hode Rabino talking Arizona State football next. DJ and PK, it's 97.5 The Zone. We are joined now by Hode Rabino, publisher of Devil's Digest, covering the Arizona State Sun Devils. Hode, good morning.
Good morning, guys. How you doing?
We're doing well. We love the spring football tour. Bring us up to date on the changes in college football. And with the transfer portal, things have never been changing more quickly and more often. Has the Valley been activated? Is the rebuild underway? Have steps been made in talent acquisition? And if so, what is the most impressive acquisition? What is the position group that has been most improved?
Yeah, I think as far as activating the Valley from a community standpoint, I think the right steps are taking place. it definitely helps when you have an alumnus as your head coach, somebody as charismatic and young as Kenny Dillingham. I know it's not where the program wants to be in terms of community involvement, in terms of NIL levels, but I think there have been major strides made in the year and a half or so that Kenny Dillingham has been on the job. In terms of position upgrades through the transfer portal, I think that ASU did an excellent job on defense, really from top to bottom. When you look at defensive line all the way down to secondary, I think they definitely made some quality acquisitions over there in the transfer portal. When it comes to offense, I think that may be one position that maybe did not have the quantity of quality additions that the defense had. However, the starting quarterback, as it stands right now, is a transfer, Sam Levitt from Michigan State. They added a running back that I'm sure you and I are very familiar with, Raleek Brown from USC. So that's a proven playmaker that's added over there. They added some offensive linemen too. So I think there's definitely some key pieces that were maybe more focused additions, if that makes sense, on offense compared to defense, where it just seems like mass additions. But overall, this is a transfer class that, on my network at least, is ranked fifth in the nation. So I think that does speak both to the quantity and the quality that ASU has been able to acquire.
When they came up here last year and lost, I had the defense coordinator tell me afterward he felt sorry for them because of the amount of injuries that they had along the offensive line. And I know they had, I think it was Coleman who got hurt and wasn't able to play, and his back. And they had a New Mexico kid who transferred in but didn't seem like he was going to get time and transferred right back out. So they have to have an offensive line. And that the area where I think they needed the most improvement was that very position. What's your assessment?
Yeah, I think you definitely hit the nail on the head. I know one of the worst cliches in football is that it all starts up front. But I think it's also a very, very true, banal statement to make of the sport of football. I mean, sure, you want a great quarterback, you want great skill players, you want playmakers on defense, but you're only going to go as far as your offensive and defensive line. And to your point, yes, the offensive line was absolutely decimated with injuries. The player you mentioned, Ben Coleman, a transfer from Cal, he didn't even start the season healthy, only practice towards the end of the season. So that was just a big loss, right off the bat over there. But I think that, right now, coming out of spring practice, it is a fairly healthy offensive line, definitely compared to last year. And I know the bar is pretty low. And there is, I would say, cautious optimism that this offensive line, just by being healthier, let alone having some key additions from the transfer portal, is going to play at a higher level. I think there's some concern in terms of the tackle position, who's going to be occupying both right tackle and, more importantly, left tackle. I mean, there are players on the roster that can do it, but at what level they can perform, I think that is definitely a big TBD right now. Would not be surprised if some way, somehow, ASU would add another transfer portal addition at the offensive line. This is a time of year that the pickings are pretty slim. But if ASU did find a player that they felt could help them, I could see them definitely going that route, again, more in the offensive tackle rather than an offensive guard position.
Arizona State has a rep for having really good wide receivers. Is there a playmaker, difference maker? Reading the story about the spring game, Jordan Tyson scored on some long pass. Is he the guy? Is it somebody else? Or is there a little hiccup here and maybe they don't have what they historically have had at wide receiver?
Well, look, I mean, full disclosure, I think losing Elijah Badger to the transfer portal, and at this point, maybe even losing him to the in-state rival Arizona, which is a possibility, is not something you can just shrug your shoulders over. But at the same time, this is a deep wide receiver group. To your point, Jordan Tyson was an absolute superstar all throughout spring. He's somebody that came to ASU from Colorado, rehabbing from an ACL injury, only played in one game last year, so we weren't able to see what he's actually capable of. And in the spring, he absolutely was outstanding, even though quarterback position took a little time to settle. That did not stop him from really showcasing his talents. Troy O'Mary, a player that already was part of the roster last year, a transfer from Texas. Definitely showed a lot of flashes, was injured mid-spring, so we didn't maybe get to see a full body of work throughout this 15 practices. But when he was healthy, he was right up there with Jordan Tyson, looking like a bona fide playmaker in the aerial attack. Melquan Stavo, another returning player who was a transfer this time last year, had a very solid spring. And you still have players like Jake Smith and Xavier Guillory, who were kind of overshadowed by the three wide receivers that I mentioned. But I think overall this is a good wide receiver group. It's not out of the question that they may try to add another wide receiver out of the portal to compensate for the loss of Elijah Badger. But again, losing a guy like Badger to the transfer portal is definitely significant. But if there's any position group room that could possibly and successfully withstand that loss, I think it is the wide receiver group.
So we heard Dillingham talk about, well, when they brought in Levitt, that Jaden Rashad, man, hey, fine, man, let's have more competition. And he didn't even last the whole spring before he quit, and it took off. And I know they got, I don't know if it's official yet, but as this Jeff Sims, former Georgia Tech and Nebraska, has he announced he's going to be a Sun Devil?
Yeah, he announced in a very covert way, but yes, he is definitely part of the roster.
Okay.
Maybe didn't announce it as other transfers, but yeah, Jeff Sims is definitely part of the quarterback roster.
It seemed Rashad, I know he had an injury and then he quit. I assume he read the writing on the wall. Levitt wins the job. We follow him a little bit. His brother Dallin played at BYU and Utah State, so there's a loose connection there. But it seemed like, my question for you, did he win the job through good play, or did he win the job by default?
He definitely did win the job by good play. Now, when you say win by default, I mean, I'll put some qualifier on that. I mean, like you said, Jaden Rashada did suffer a non-football injury sometime in January. So he was not able to be a full participant of spring practice when it did start all the way back on March 26th. Halfway through spring practice, you talk about reading the writing on the wall, Rashada did realize that if he's going to keep on being sidelined, then Levitt just might win this job by default. But the thing is, when Rashada was taking reps, not only in one-on-ones and 7-on-7s, but also in team segments, he definitely had a lot of rust to knock off, and he did not look good as Levitt. And so, again, not to belabor the point, when we talk about writing on the wall, yes, I think that Rashada did realize that there's no way that he is going to finish spring practice as the starter ahead of Sam Levitt, maybe even ahead of his backup, Trent Bourget, for that matter. So that's the reason why he left. And I know there have been some, highly contested posts back and forth on Twitter concerning that, but it definitely was a case where Rashada, who was the starter last year and would have started the entire year if he didn't have another injury take place in the middle of the year, that he would be the starter all of last year and probably the presumed starter in 2024. But it's just this weird chain of events of an injury last year, a different injury this year, and basically knowing that he would not win the job. So Sam Levitt definitely did outplay Rashada, and Sam Levitt in his own right, even though he started spring on a slow note, you just saw him getting better and better each and every practice, each and every week. So Sam Levitt definitely won this job, rightfully, and I don't think that even Jaden Rashada still being on the roster would be a clear and present danger to actually unseat Levitt from the starting position.
So PK is an Arizona State grad, and he follows this, and been in the same league with the Utes, and now they'll be in the same league with the Cougars. So he throws these nuggets at us about activate the Valley, right? And so we kind of get up on the local storyline. And PK, what was the stat about the number of local guys who didn't go to ASU? I mean, this is just an overwhelming.
They got a commitment from two guys that are in the top 10 in the state of Arizona for the first time since 2013.
Oh, my gosh. So they're only losing like 98% of the game. Oh, it's horrific. So the transfer portal, it's hard for me to keep up on this, but I did see a thing about Cole Martin, who's a 4-star recruit out of Chandler. He's a local kid. He goes to Oregon. He actually plays right away, and now he's transferring back to ASU. Is this being heralded as this is proof of concept? It's working. The local guy wants to come back. He was already at Oregon playing. I mean, is this just being sold beyond belief? And can he back it up as a 4-star recruit and come in and solidify a secondary that in the Big 12 is going to be tested, and teams throw it in the Big 12 and throw it well?
Yeah, look, I mean, there's no secret that Kenny Dillingham from day one was going to take a lot of pride in landing local players. And to your point, you can add the local players also from the transfer portal. A guy like Cole Martin was in Oregon all of 1 year and already came back. So you're pretty much, getting a seasoned freshman that's going to have 3 years of eligibility now that he's back at ASU. So, yeah, that's definitely a feather in the cap of Kenny Dillingham's local recruiting efforts. And it was a given that he wasn't going to come in overnight and just land top 5 in-state players left and right. But the fact that, like you said, that he added 2 top 10 players in the state, one of them the number 3 in the in-state prospect, the highest in-state prospect they landed since 2017, does show that those efforts are going to work. And look, I mean, on the one hand, ASU does have a lot to offer, and some players do like the comfort of staying close to home. But on the other hand, you just have a program that is still trying to find its traction. It is coming off back-to-back 3-9 seasons, so that's something that is not appealing to each and every quality in-state recruit. And look, I mean, even though Maricopa County is one of the most popular counties for people to move into, I mean, the population just keeps on increasing, top 3 nationwide. You still have cases where you have players that are born and raised in the Valley that do want to spread their wings. And, maybe they play all their 4 years away from their home. Maybe they come back like Cole Martin after 1 year back home, but that's another issue that ASU has to contend with. ASU in this 2025 class has been doing a great job landing top 75 prospects from the state of California. So just like those kids from California that were born and raised in that state want to spread their wings, go somewhere else, you definitely have the same case of players that did grow up in ASU's backyard and just want to play elsewhere in college. But I think that ASU slowly but surely are making strides in that area. And again, when you look at transfers like Cole Martin, when you look what they've accomplished so far in the 2025 recruiting class cycle, which is still very early in its progression, I think that you definitely have to commend Kenny Dillingham and his staff.
Last year was a real interesting season for them, starting running backs and tight ends at quarterback. That's never going to end well. And, they had some nice wins. They won over there in the Rose Bowl against the Bruins, and they should have won, obviously, up in Washington, which would have kept them out potentially of the all the run that they made. And I already spoke. They got smoked by the Utes. They got smoked by Oregon. So it was so wild, and Dillingham knew, and everybody knew what that. I wanted to use a swear word to set up Herm Edwards, but I won't. That it was going to be a struggle. Now, talking to people down in the Phoenix area, they feel like, they're making inroads with this 25 recruiting class that you said, and I know they got way more commitments than they've ever had this time of year, and they feel like, their day will come. And I think Dillingham said the other day that one of the media availabilities, we will win, and so he put it out there. But they need some kind of more tangible progress this season. So with that in mind, what level do you think they can get that tangible progress, and how does it translate into the potential number of wins? Because my thought is if they can somehow find a way to get 6 wins, then that will really put a charge into what he's trying to do.
I'm 100% in agreement with what you said right now. Just having 6 wins, obviously doubling the number of wins from last year, getting to a bowl game during your first year in the Big 12, that is definitely something that ASU can hang its hat on. I mean, sure, folks on the one hand, do have patience. On the other hand, they're football fans. Their patience only can run so long. But you definitely want to show some strides from year to year. There's no doubt on the one hand, Kenny Dillingham did inherit an absolute mess from the Herm Edwards era. No need to relive those nightmare seasons in Tempe. But on the other hand, and like you said earlier, with the offensive line injuries, I felt that when they came to the month of November, and let's make no mistake about it, they absolutely got blown out at Utah, at home, against Oregon and against Arizona. It was just a team that was just really running on fumes at that point. The key injuries really just caught up with them in the month of November after they had a somewhat decent September and October. I think they came out way too slow out of the gates in September with a schedule that they could have easily won. I think another game or two if they were totally healthy. Also, not such a great offensive coordinator hire in Bo Baldwin. That also did hurt the Sun Devils back then. And look, I mean, the Big 12 conference is new to all of us. For folks that cover Utah, folks that cover ASU like myself, and even folks that cover BYU because they're only 1 year into the Big 12. But suffice to say it, that I don't think any conference in America was truly as challenging as the Pac-12 was last year, and you just see at the quality of quarterbacks that it produced in the NFL draft, and really just the amount of players from the Pac-12 period that were selected in that draft. That was an absolute murderer's row of a schedule for ASU, especially when your team in such massive rebuilding mode on the one hand, and then having just an absolute plethora of injuries on top of that. So I look at this ASU team, and I'm thinking that 6 wins might be well within reach, just because I think the competition level, and I'm not belittling the Big 12, is not going to be as strong as the Pac-12 was last year. I'm looking at another September schedule, which I feel is definitely a good launching pad to actually win six games this coming season. So I think it's definitely within reach for ASU. They still have to feel, I think, more comfortable in their passing game, and that starts with a very young quarterback like Sam Levitt, as I mentioned earlier, really shoring up the offensive tackle positions and making sure that this wide receiver group can indeed overcome the loss of Elijah Badger. If that does take place, I think all the dominoes really fall from there on offense. And again, I think this defense is better than it was last year because of the transfer portal additions. So yes, I think that just winning 6 games this coming season would be huge for Arizona State, again, especially in the first year in the Big 12, because ultimately, you do want to show some progress from year to year. I think that folks, again, have some kind of degree of patience with Kenny Dillingham, but I think that the patience might run out a little quicker than expected if you just turn in another 3 or even 4-win season in 2024.
Are you like me? Do you root for the Raiders to go 0-17?
Wow. Look, Antonio Pierce definitely had his fingerprints all over those recruiting violations that ASU committed. I think I would even blame more Herm Edwards. I mean, the buck has to stop, with the head coach at some point. And as much as you want to delegate, you just really need to make sure that you're delegating, to the right folks. Also, put a lot of blame on former athletic director Ray Anderson. I think they just mishandled the football program magnificently, and yes, I do say that with a lot of cynicism.
And don't leave out Regina.
Yes, yeah. I mean, kind of ironic that the booster that ASU cannot associate itself for the next 5 years is a mother of Jaden Daniels, who hasn't been with the program for over 3 years and is right now obviously in the NFL. It really was a dark period in ASU's program history. There's really no other way to say it. Yes, everybody cheats, but you know what? You need also to have some kind of level of expertise to cheat correctly, so you don't get caught. And I understand teams like Tennessee and Air Force got caught for more or less the same violations over the same time period. But that was an era of the program that just reeked of incompetence, and getting all these recruiting violations and subsequent recruiting sanctions is just really the icing on the cake of an absolute mess of 3-4 years in ASU program history.
Well, the news that the Lions rookie Terran Arnold broke that he was told that the Raiders used a coin flip to decide between him and Brock Bowers suggests that if you don't get 0-17 out of the Raiders, you get something close to it. There's no reason to have a coin flip on your first-round draft pick. That is wrong on multiple levels. Not that it would be okay in the second or third round, but it's especially horrific in the first round.
Yeah, I think Raiders really have their own quote-unquote mystique, and they would love that information to come out to light about a coin toss. So it really, it is what it is. Sure. I mean, I know there's a lot of ASU fans out there that would love for the Raiders to go 0-17 from now until infinity each and every season. But I just feel that, overall, ASU fans are just really trying to put that dark period of ASU football in the rearview mirror. The good thing is that there are no more sanctions in terms of hosting recruits or going on the road to evaluate recruits. All those sanctions are going to end on August 1st. So that part is going to be behind them. They were lucky to get a reduction in scholarships of only one. So instead of being allowed to have the max 85 this coming year, they're only going to be able to have 84. Not a big deal when you look at the roster. And again, after this season, that's going to be behind them. ASU, I mean, not to go on a whole tangent over here, they offered a lot of sacrificial lambs for the NCAA, and I know there was a lot of criticism from the fans when you saw one sacrificial lamb after another being offered. But I think ultimately, when it came to the NCAA sanctions, that body did take that in consideration. And again, it's just a matter of all of the consequences being pretty much almost done, done with. And I don't think that can or should be used as an excuse if ASU does not better itself in 2024.
Hode, we appreciate the time. Thanks for joining us. We will talk to you again when the season's closer.
My pleasure, guys. Thank you.
Hode Rabino, publisher of the Devil's Digest, covering the Arizona State Sun Devils. When we come back, what is trending? The headlines are on the way.
It's time to get your morning started with the news you need to know.
News update.
This is what's trending with DJ and PK. Hashtag NBA.
5 on the clock. Mitchell to the left wing. Mitchell sidesteps. 3-ball. Bullseye! A perfect 3 from the left wing. Mobley still on the bench with those 4 fouls. Thompson hands off Mitchell. 3. Banked it in. Are you kidding me? Donovan Mitchell calls glass. The bank was open. 24 for Mitchell.
There was one guy courtside going at my family. I don't like that, man. You're a grown-ass man. I just can't do that, but I didn't do nothing. I just went back, nothing. But just, it's crazy. It's a grown-ass man. Come at my family. It's kind of nuts.
Luka Doncic, after the Dallas Mavericks beat the Thunder 119-110. They tie that series up at a game apiece, and the role players really coming through for the Mavericks, PK. That's more scoring than we normally see out of those guys.
I thought that watching Game 1, watching Game 2, watching both teams play since they're in the Western Conference, we highlight them a little bit more for obvious reasons. I thought that the attack mode that the Mavericks were in offensively was the big difference. They were going to push it. They were going to run. They were going to get OKC on their heels, and that's what happened. And shots went in. And you can't just look at, if you look at both games, right, the team that shot way better won both games. All right. I mean, that's make or miss league. We understand that. But there's a lot that go into make or miss. It's just not, literally come down, put up the shot. If it goes in, great. If it's not, you're screwed. You know, there's the stuff that goes into it. And I thought the Mavericks, that was one of the better games that I've seen those guys play since Kyrie Irving was there, if not the best game. And I'm not watching every game, obviously. But the way they attacked, they ran the floor. They're big men running the floor to get down there. It just seemed like they were constantly putting pressure on OKC all night, and every time OKC would make a run and the crowd would get into it, I mean, like literally every time, the Mavericks then, if they got down or the OKC got within a point or two, they'd go on this run and they'd just reestablish themselves. I was very impressed. I don't know if they could do it 3 more times, but that was a real fun game to watch.
I thought it was highly unusual, and the Kyrie Irving only took 8 shots, only made 2 of them, but he was a factor with the 11 assists.
Right.
And the other guys are hitting shots, so he deferred to them. That's a sign of a healthy team. Stars got to know if other guys have it going. Let them have it going. They probably won't have it 4 times, but the night they do, we'll ride them to win, and then Kyrie can figure it out. Luka and I can figure it out, and we'll carry him on another night. But tonight, Washington with 29, Hardaway off the bench with 17. Gafford had 13. I mean, they're just not going to do this.
But they can give that effort.
In one, right?
And I didn't watch the post game because we got to go to bed and get up so early. But I'm wondering if Kidd had said stuff like that. Guys, we have got to put pressure on them. We can't just go in the half court. We do have Luka, one of the better half court offensive players in the league. But how about we just attack the hoop? And then, of course, I don't get what the Gams are doing on the sideline. Leave the players alone. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Gams have got to stop doing that.
Cleveland, tied at halftime in Boston, completely dominates the second half and blows the Celtics out 118-94. Boston is a weird team, and they play weird games. And they're talented, and there's no doubt about it, and they may win this series, but how do you get blown out like that at home, a 16-point fourth quarter? And the third quarter was a mess. Maybe they figured we're beaten, and that's why they stunk so bad in the fourth. But there was still time to come back. I don't get it. They haven't played a playoff game yet decided by single digits. It's double digits. And
I think this is who they are. I don't know why you don't get it.
Because nobody else is like this.
But they are.
No, they are, yeah. And the other thing they are is not good at home. Last 30 playoff games, 15 wins, 15 losses. For a team that's won as much as they have and as good as they are, you think they'd be better at home because everybody else seems to be better at home? They're not. They don't.
Who's the alpha on that team that says, guys, I got this? I don't think they have anybody.
Yeah, agreed. Agreed. To be the championship team that we think they ought to evolve into, somebody ought to assume that role. And by now, you think it'd be Tatum or Brown, and they're both really good, but you wouldn't say that about them.
Right.
Phoenix Suns fired head coach Frank Vogel. 1 season, you're out. Lots of money. He's got $20 million coming still, so he'll be fine. But one and done. Mike Budenholzer is the front runner, expected to land the job. Phoenix, this doesn't look very stable, PK. This is in your wheelhouse right here.
Well, this is a new owner who's trying to capture success metaphorically overnight. And sometimes it doesn't work that way. Budenholzer, he's an Arizona guy up there in Holbrook, in northern Arizona. So coming home, so to speak. And he's got some pedigree. He took a year off, obviously. So maybe he can make the difference. But the thing about it is, they threw all these guys together immediately, right? And they didn't hit a home run. So now they're going to... If they just change the coach and don't just totally redo everything, I would think I would favor that more because, like, Minnesota had a disappointing year last year relative to their expectations. Did they blow it up? No. I mean, they had 2 guys boxing on the sideline. Did they get rid of either one? No. And they got over it. Sometimes you need to let things develop a little bit.
The NBA suspended Milwaukee Bucks guard Patrick Beverley for 4 games for throwing the ball at fans multiple times, along with his, quote, inappropriate interaction, close quote, with an ESPN producer after their Lost last week after the late in the elimination game. He threw a ball at a fan who wasn't looking and hit him in the head. And then when he got the ball back, he fired it hard at somebody who was about, 5 yards away. And then wouldn't talk to a reporter afterwards. You subscribe to my podcast? So wherever he is next year, he gets to miss the first 4 games.
I hope he's on his couch.
He could be. He is at that point in his career.
I mean, it's just over and over again with this guy. Come on, he's not that good. What's the point of going through life like this?
Charlotte Hornets are set to hire Boston Celtics assistant Charles Lee as their new head coach. So,
he'll have a nice 3 to 5 year run and get fired.
Former NBA forward Glenn Big Baby Davis has been sentenced to 40 months in prison and 3 years of supervised release for his conviction in an alleged scheme to defraud the league's health care benefits plan. Don't often see that. Ripping off the other players there, defrauding the plan, but 40 years now in prison, or 40 months in prison for him.
Man, he goes to the slammer. You think he's going to say, hey, Big Baby.
DJ and PK.
Hashtag NFL.
Tension in that room, though.
It was real.
Good cut.
It was very real. It was very real.
I was watching Coach, and I tried to give Coach a heads up. I'm like, I see Kraft walk in. I'm like, yo, Coach. Some locker room, like 5-0. He did. Of course, he didn't see it.
Right.
And he came in, and I was like, oh, this could be fireworks. I just walked away.
Drew Bledsoe and Julian Edelman said the green room prior to the Tom Brady roast was tense because Bill Belichick and Robert Kraft were in the same room. Kraft letting Belichick go, and then Kraft maybe talking to Atlanta's owner and shooting down his possibility to get a job there. Former LSU teammates Jaden Daniels and Malik Neighbors have a $10,000 bet on who will win the NFL Offensive Rookie of the Year award. The two revealed the details in separate podcast appearances. Daniels was selected second by Washington. New York, the Giants, took Neighbors with the 6th pick. Little side bet.
Well, how come neither of them do it? I mean, what happened if neither of them?
Yeah, I don't know. Is that a push then? DJ and PK.
Hashtag college football.
Your Sun Devils add former Colorado and Houston running back Alton McCaskill. He is expected to have 3 seasons of eligibility remaining after injuries and a red shirt have impacted his career so far. He was a big get for Houston, and then he took off, piled up some good stats that first year, and then tore his ACL and has barely played in the last 2 years.
Well, I can only hope that he has the level of success as the first Alton who went there, and that'd be Alton Lister.
Famous Altons, go.
That's all I got. And my wife, who went to ASU, knew Alton Lister.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, because he was in the PE program.
What did he play, 8 to 10 years in the NBA? I mean, he was there a while.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Big man, yeah.
University of California Board of Regents is expected to accept a recommendation. Calimony. It's not alimony, it's calimony. UCLA is going to pay the University of California, Berkeley, about $10 million a year for 6 years as a result of the Bruins' upcoming move to the Big Ten and the demise of the Pac-12, with Cal going to the ACC. You help blow it up, you cost them a lot of money, you got to pay them. In-house politics there. They're both part of the University of California system, so UCLA will be right.
I think I was hurt just as much as Cal. I'd like to get some money.
Nice. We all were.
No, yeah, but I was. There's nobody in this state who's been a bigger fan of this conference than me. Certainly no one longer than me.
DJ and PK.
Hashtag Major League Baseball.
And Miller fires, and this ball hit well for Max Kepler. This ball flying into the stands for a home run.
Here's the 3-2. And Alvarez punishes one deep to right field, and you can kiss it goodbye. Into the second deck. Alvarez goes deep, his 8th of the year, and it's 1-0 Astros.
2 balls and a strike in the pitch. Hit to right center and deep. Way back. Warning track. Get up. Gone. For Rhys Hoskins. And
Brewers go on to beat the Cardinals 7-1, the final score. The Twins pound the Mariners 10-1. And the Angels get the news that Mike Trout is going to have surgery to repair his torn meniscus in his left knee. And they compound that bad news with getting hammered by the Royals 10-4.
Was that Bob Uecker on that call? Sounded like him, didn't it?
Yeah.
So we had two guys last night broadcasting games that are age 90. Bob Uecker and Hubie Brown.
It's got to be a record, right?
Man, I think it's way cool.
They still got it.
Yeah, for sure.
Still doing what they love.
At age 90.
Astros beat the Yankees 4-3. If you wanted to see the long ball, that was the game. Aaron Judge, 473-foot homer in the loss. Alvarez and Singleton hit long homers. Singleton's hit the facade of the upper deck. A moonshot. Astros, who are terrible, are picking up just a little bit of speed now. They're separating themselves from the Rockies and the White Sox. Still 11 games under 500 after that win. Bees beat the River Cats 14-8. Same two teams play today. First pitch 6:35. Tony Parks on the call beginning at 6:20. And college baseball. It'll be a college minor league doubleheader at Smith's Ballpark. Utah and Arizona play at 11 a.m. Arizona with a 2-game lead over Utah with 6 games left in the Pac-12 regular season. So
I let the people at Utah know if they do not sweep the Cats that they're dead to me.
Good. Put them on notice. Athletic director, head coach, players, all of the above. Just walking around campus telling people, what were you doing?
Well, I was throwing BP.
DJ and PK.
#RSL.
RSL knocked out of the Open Cup. They're back in MLS play tomorrow night. They are in Los Angeles playing the Galaxy. RSL in first place right now. The Galaxy in third, just 2 points behind them. So if you're into that early season race, we're only a third of the way through the season, but big game from that perspective. Should be entertaining, PK. Lots of goals, theoretically. The Galaxy are second in the league behind Messi and Miami in goals scored. They score a ton of goals, but they give up a goal and a half a game too. So,
no, they don't.
They do.
How the hell do you give up a half a goal?
On average.
That's not what you said.
Yeah, it's understood, PK. Pre-match 7:30, first kick 8:30 right here on The Zone. And the Utah Royals are in Chicago to face the Red Stars Sunday at 3:30. And you'll hear that game at 3 o'clock here on The Zone. DJ and PK, it's 97.5 The Zone.
Left side of Lafreniere sends it in. Round the boards it goes. Missed by Orlov. Played it. Score! Score! Yes! Yes! The Rangers win it in overtime and lead the series 3-0.
Tanev delivered it behind the net. Comes around to Hintz. He bumps it back. Lindell towards the empty net will score! Esa Lindell from the defensive corner all the way down the ice. And he will send this series back to Denver, tied at 1.
NHL. That's the Dallas Stars beating the Colorado Avalanche 5-3. That series is tied at a game apiece. And the New York Rangers may never lose again. Best record in the regular season. They won the President's Trophy, and now they've won 7 straight playoff games. Sweep in the first round. Now they're up 3-0 on Carolina after that overtime 3-2 win. Last time the Rangers did stuff like this, they won it all in 94. That year they started 6-0 in the playoffs and had the best regular season record. So going down that road again. Panthers and Bruins, Oilers and Canucks tonight on TNT. That's your doubleheader at 5 and 8 o'clock. And that's what's trending. They're your headlines. Coming up, question of the day, Dustin Smith, QB Elite, Spanish Fork, high school head coach. He's going to join us at 8 o'clock. Find out what he thinks of some of the local products in the state on the way up, and McKay Hillstead transferring from Utah State to to BYU. We'll talk with him about that. Kurt Schmid, Real Salt Lake Chief Soccer Officer at 8:30. Ron McBride, former Utah and Weber State head coach, in the 9 o'clock hour on spring ball at Utah and BYU. And the concert he's promoting. Ron's doing it all. He'll be in studio at 9. DJ and PK, the question of the day is next.
Accessing.
This is Hans Olsen and Scotty G.
Maybe Indiana's a place where you can have metal-piercing bullets. Can't imagine those are legal anywhere. Maybe they are. Metal-piercing bullets? Jeez. What are you facing? What's the guy with a metal suit?
The Tin Man?
No. The guy from Weird Science plays him. Something Junior. He wears a metal suit. And like I was going to say...
RoboCop? Oh, that's a good one.
It's the guy that wears metal and flies around.
The Rocket Man. Rocketeer, sorry.
We've given you so many guys with metal suits.
You're not close.
I'm sorry.
Why are you mad at us? You have Google in front of you.
Okay. I
Man in metal suit.
Iron Man. How did you guys not get Iron Man?
All the Iron Man I could think of.
Come up with 30 things with guys dressed in metal. 30.
Truth is, I am Iron Man.
Catch Hans and Scotty weekdays from noon to 3 on 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.
DJ and PK, it's 97.5 The Zone. It's time for Hot Takes or Toast, brought to you by Siegfried and Jensen with 30 years of serving Utah. Both road teams won in the NBA. We're in the second round. We got a couple of series at 1-1. How good are these playoffs? And PK?
Yeah.
The responses were not encouraging for the NBA. The hockey team is sucking up all the oxygen right now. Eldon. These NBA playoffs, they're not as good as the NHL playoffs. All those people that made deposits for your tickets better be watching.
Why?
Because they're about to be hockey fans. They need to know what's going on. Dan says the NHL playoffs are fantastic. And Steve says nothing's better than the Stanley Cup playoffs. Put up a basketball question and get a lot of hockey responses.
Nothing is better than the NHL playoffs. I don't know about that, man.
Loogie's dad says, I don't care one bit. Just a reflection on the current state of the Utah Jazz rebuild. People ice cold on the NBA playoffs. We're not in them. We're not in them. We're not near them. And I don't know when we will be. I'm checking out.
I don't buy that.
People just need to release the tension. Release the hounds. Let them go bark, but their bark is worse than their bite. As soon as the Jazz are good, everybody will be on board, whether that's a year or 3 years or 5 years or whatever.
Oh, I don't think there's any question about that.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a lot of elements that go into it. And if you talk to some people, they would give you reasons that would make others uncomfortable.
That would be race and politics. Easy there. Easy. Thought you were going to pass out and tip over.
You said it, not me. You said it, not me. You said it, not me.
We've seen it in comments all year long. There's still a section of the fan base that's mad about stuff that happened 4 years ago.
I'm furious.
There's stuff over time that just goes away, and I think we've seen that with the NFL. There were people mad at the NFL, and they would never watch the NFL again, but the NFL is setting all-time viewership records, and it's going to hold everybody up for more money next time they get a chance. So let's find another night of the week to play an NFL game on. Let's play on a Friday after Thanksgiving. Let's take over Christmas. Hey, let's expand the playoffs and take away all those time slots they might put college football playoff games in. I mean, the NFL is not bothered by whatever happened 3, 4, 5 years ago.
Right.
And would the NBA in town if the Jazz were good? If the Jazz were in the second round, if it was the Mavericks, if the Jazz were playing the Thunder instead of the Mavericks, where would we be?
If the Jazz were playing the Mavericks instead of the Thunder playing the Mavericks?
Yeah.
Oh, my gosh, we'd be all over it. It would be the biggest thing we got going on. Yeah, I think hockey has an opportunity to be the biggest thing at the time. But it's not going to be about the next couple years to determine that, though. That's going to be long range, because you get a boost. Things that are new and shiny.
Yes.
Right? People are interested in how's it going to be, and you don't want to be left out. If there's something that's really hot, You want to be, I pay attention to it. I'm cool. I like all kinds of music. I take long walks in the park, and stuff you're supposed to say. So there'll be that. And there's no doubt about that. And we understand that. And what will it be 5 years from now? What will it be 10 years from now? Because I was talking to Ryan Hatch, and he's our old program director, and now he's Grand Poobah of all things in Phoenix, right? It's a Bonneville station, and we're a Bonneville station. So even if, we didn't know him, we'd have that connection. But we've known we've known the kid since he was a teenager, which is true. I did shows with him.
When he was in high school at Skyline. Yeah. Unbelievable.
And now, he's well beyond that. I think he's got a kid who's a senior in high school this year. And I was talking with him about it. And he was saying, well, in 96, now he wasn't there in 96, but when he was talking about when they moved there, the thing was going berserk. It was such a big deal. And then over time, you settle in. And then I asked him, okay, how about now? And where did it fit on the landscape? Now, you're talking about a city that has everything. We don't have everything because it has the beast. And the beast, of course, is
the National Football League.
Yeah, absolutely. And plus that area has just exploded in growth, even probably beyond people's imagination. And there's a lot of people who are natives there now, like my sister's kids. I got 2 sisters, and they each have a child. That's all they know. That they were born, went to school there, the whole spiel. So that is literally home. There's enough people there like that now, but there's also a lot of people who still move in and they take their Pittsburgh Steelers affiliation with them, blah blah blah. And so the point I'm making is on sports radio when they discuss stuff, they go more certainly on the locals and the NFL. The Cardinals are the beast, but they also go more on the NFL because of the fact that there's so many folks there that bring their allegiances with them.
Cowboys, Packers, Bears, and Steelers, right? On and on.
Yeah. All and the New York teams, blah blah blah. And so I said, where did the Coyotes fit in? And he said, it was way down the list. And that's from 96 to now is just under 28 years, I guess it would be. And so that's the true test. In the beginning, oh man, it's going to be off the charts, and it'll be interesting to see next year too, because I still think the Jazz will be the Jazz, and if the Jazz get better, which I anticipate them getting better. Next season, of course, I anticipate them getting better over the course of the next 3 to 5 years. I don't think anybody would argue with that. But when I listen to Ainge saying we're going big game hunting, I expect that now. Whether they can actually make it happen is another story, but that's my expectation, is that it will happen. And if they can't go big game hunting, then they can go small game hunting or medium game hunting. The point I'm making is the team will be better, so we will be more engaged when we get to January, February, and March than we were this year because we knew the outcome. And how will that relate to the hockey? The hockey will still be big because it'll be brand new. But I think NBA playoffs, in terms of postseason, are as good as any postseason.
But if you disengaged from your team in February or March or April, whenever you decided, okay, they're losing, I'm out, do you reengage for the playoffs?
Well, I can because I'm more of a fan of the sport. And I really, really enjoyed that ball game last night in the Western Conference. To see that game be played the way it was, and watch the Mavericks be on the attack. And they talk about soccer being on the attack, and we can understand what that means in our mind. And I really felt that was the case. Plus, you've got this Denver-Minnesota series, in really, really intriguing. What can happen? I'm kind of rooting for Denver because I would like a longer series. But at the same time, to see some team that's fresh do it that hasn't done it, I think that's super cool too. So there's a lot of stuff going on there that really intrigues me. And it's about, you just watch these guys just ball out. That immediately draws interest to me because it's fun to watch that. See, and I don't care what gender it is. Just watch people ball out, whatever sport. or puck out, I guess they would say. In this,
compete is the word you're looking for. When there's compete. When both teams are trying really hard to win.
Put everything out there. That's the attraction. And to me, it's really good. And then you got, and the thing about the NBA is it takes on the series, take on a life of their own, you know. Now we've got, what are the calls going to be in the Indiana-New York series? They sent like 97 clips of bad calls, whatever it was, you know what I mean? And
I get what, if Brunson doesn't play, though, and he's listed as questionable, and if Anunoby's out, I mean, at some point, if they're down like 5 guys, they're gonna get drilled, and it's not going to be watchable.
Okay, but that happens. It happens,
right? But Knick games are the antithesis of the Celtic games. The Knicks always seem to play competitive games, and so to your point, that competition level in the last 5 minutes, that's hard to walk away from. That's pretty good stuff. And they're in the East. We're not as tied in emotionally to teams, although if they're, playing one of the guys who. We'll see if they, get Cleveland in the next round. That would maybe put a little more juice in it. If Cleveland gets through and Mitchell's involved, then there's a tie here. But either way,
for sure.
it's been close competitive basketball. They've won despite one injury, despite another. They had their Jazz connection with Bogey. Bogdanovich is out now. He's hurt. He's like the third guy they're down.
They still got Alec Burks sitting on the bench.
Yeah, you're right. Well, maybe not on the bench. If they go down a 4th and 5th guy, at some point it's like, okay, this is too much.
Hey,
I'm impressed they overcame 3.
The Jazz drafted ahead of Kawhi Leonard.
Oops.
And if you want to be in hockey, be in hockey. Great. No problem.
And that's what we get. A lot of people are into the hockey playoffs right now.
I was thinking about this morning, because obviously I know we're going to talk about it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm thinking, how are we going to handle that next year if this team is in the playoff? Because these games go on simultaneously.
What if they overlap?
Yeah.
How are we going to handle this?
It's very difficult to follow both. I really can't. And right now, in full sincerity and honesty, I'm giving the hockey the shorter change. I flick over, but the basketball is drawing me in. It's the way they play in the postseason. It literally forces me to watch. It's like I can't look away. What am I going to miss?
Well, I'll worry about both teams being in the playoffs when we actually have that problem. Right now, they're both out of the playoffs, and I think one of the reasons that Ryan Hatch downgraded the hockey so much is that they downgraded themselves. I mean, they missed the playoffs 11 times in 9 years, and that's not on any one person. 11 times in 12 years. I don't know what happened with the number 9. 11 times in 12 years, and they had 3 different owners in that time span. You can't even – there was so much turmoil. The team was so unsettled that I get why they fell to the bottom of the rack. I think if all things are equal in this country, hockey's, probably chasing in most markets. There's a few exceptions, and mostly exceptions in markets where, the hockey's been way better than the basketball. So which team's going to win here? That's the one we're going to focus on. And to your point, if they both win, well, we'll have to decide when that happens. What level do they win at? Is one team get in and maybe win a series? Is the other team equipped for a deep run? We'll have
I'll
to
handle the hoop and you do the hockey. And then we both come in and we report on it.
Divide and conquer.
You do that and I'll do this. Right? We solved that problem right there.
Well, hopefully they'll both get it rolling, and that'll be a good problem to have. But we'll see.
Yeah, it's like too much ice cream, right?
Too much ice cream. There's never too much ice cream, PK.
Exactly.
Never too much winning in sports.
Yeah.
I mean, what are they doing in New York right now, right? The Rangers are 7-0 in the postseason. They're the 1 seed over there, and the Knicks are the 2 seed, and they're up 2-0 in the second round, and they're up 3-0 in the second round. They're figuring it out.
I went through this in Los Angeles, working at the Daily Breeze with the Kings. And I don't know if there was any really studies were done on it, but the prevailing thought, and I was younger, so I'm going with guys that had been in the business longer and, they knew more stuff than I did about life in general. If you're, 60 and somebody's 25, usually they know more about things. And they felt like the Kings had a strong audience, but there wasn't a lot of crossover, that it was the hardcore audience and that's who they were, whereas the Lakers were enormous and they crossed over a lot of different groups of people. Whereas the hockey had its group, and it was solid and it was strong, but there was less people in just aggregate number, and most of the hockey people fit a certain type of demographic, where in basketball you got people from all races and all ethnicities and so forth that were into it. And so if it came down to it, the Lakers would win.
I totally buy that. Now, maybe that's a product of, the Lakers were on top of their game for 3 decades. The Kings were newer, and the Kings were not on top of their game for 3 decades.
Except they were at that time.
At that time, they were good, but they didn't have the momentum of the year before and the 5 years before and the 10 years before and the generation before. And the Lakers did. I mean, really, the Lakers and the Dodgers on the LA sports scene, I think, have separated from the other pro sports teams. Probably the next most popular team is USC football.
Well, if you go on just the various people and the different faces that literally are different faces, they had a wider spectrum of people.
Yeah. Yep. Well, I mean, there's 4 markets juggling this right now. Boston and New York in the East, and Dallas and Denver in the West have both their hockey and basketball teams winning. So if we're lucky, they'll both turn it around. Or maybe we're sitting here a year from now saying, remember when we were worried about that? And the arena's just hosting concerts and nobody's playing. I mean,
I don't think we have to be lucky, because I think it's going to happen. It's just a question of when.
When. All right, DJ and PK, it's 97.5, The Zone. Coming up, Dustin Smith, QB Elite and Spanish Fork High football coach, is going to join us at 8 o'clock. What does the Cougar situation look like to him at quarterback? We will talk with him coming up. DJ and PK, it's 97.5. Well, is he dialed into the Utes, you think? I mean, an in-state guy gives him an edge. Well, in this case, an in-county guy, right? He's dialed into that. We'll check with him coming up 8 o'clock right here on The Zone.
Ladies and gentlemen, may I present...
This is JJ and Alex.
If the team did stay together, if the crew did stay together, no one would say, I want to build my team around Donovan Mitchell and Rudy Gobert.
That's why the Jazz had to blow it up.
Right.
Because if they really wanted to contend with all this talent we just mentioned and all these teams, and we're seeing that come to fruition this year, Jamal Murray and Jokic, there's another duo that's still very formidable, right? The champs. The Jazz weren't anywhere close to that. With Donovan and Rudy and all the other pieces they had, they were a first-round out. We didn't even mention the Suns or the Lakers or the Warriors. There's so many other teams here that have 1 or 2 dudes. The Jazz don't have that, so the Jazz had to blow those guys up and start over, because what they really want is a title. If you're going to do that, you weren't going to get there with Donovan Mitchell.
Catch JJ and Alex afternoons from 3 to 6. Presented by G2G Bars on 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.
The band of the day, U2. Bono is 64 today. Band of the day brought to you by Live Nation. For all of the live concerts and events in 2024, check out livenation.com. DJ and PK, got a question up on our Facebook page. Do guys who wear cap backwards, as Colin Coward says, look like couch movers? Couch movers?
Yeah, that's what he said. They look like they move couches, because J.J. Redick was wearing his hat backwards. That was the big thing. And then I saw your guy, who's the bald dude who does the ESPN things at night. Sometimes they interview guys off of games, and the guy, I forget who it was it Doncic or maybe, I don't know, had the hat on, and the ESPN guy said, well, some people in our business think that's inappropriate or couch movers. And then they had a picture of Jason Kidd and Ryan Smith.
And they had hats on backwards?
Yeah, and then I was listening to the NBA station in the morning with that Frank, the guy from New York, and Scalabrini. And Frank said, yeah, it was Jason Kidd and some other guy. I think it was an NFL player. Well, it's Ryan Smith.
Yeah, Ryan.
And Ryan Smith is known to wear the backwards cap. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he is a back cap billionaire. Ryan Smith. He loves the cap backwards.
Steve posted, when you have Ryan Smith money, you can wear your cap however you want. Russell, on the other hand.
So true.
They sure don't look very bright. It amazes me that it's still a thing. It's an IQ thing? Turning your cap around?
What?
The only case where it's an IQ thing in my book, and this guy posted, Russell posted this. This is awesome. So here's a guy. It looks like he's at a baseball game. He's sitting in a crowd. He's at some type of event. But there's a lot of people around him wearing baseball caps, so I assume it's baseball. You can't see the field or the whatever they're looking at. He's staring right into the sun. He's got sunglasses and a ball cap on, but he's got the cap turned around backwards, and then he's holding his hand up to shade his eyes. Like, dude, that's literally what the bill of the cap is there for. Spin your hat around. This is specifically why it was made. This is when you need it. Oops.
Yeah, I don't wear the cap backwards because then you can't see the best part of the cap.
The logo?
Yeah.
You are a hat connoisseur. If you brought in all your caps, would you be bringing in 100 of them or 200 of them?
I'd say probably the former.
100. I always have to figure it out. Former, latter, 200. Former would be the 100. 100. Yeah, I got it. Josh rejects the entire conversation. Colin Cowherd is an insufferable tool. No one cares what he thinks. Somebody does. He's getting paid
he has
a lot.
A house in Manhattan Beach and a house in Promontory, and he bought a bigger house in Promontory based on the first one. And I know that because he literally told me that himself.
What are you doing getting into his business? Oh, he was just volunteering it, huh? You saw him at a Ute game, didn't you?
Rode an elevator with him.
Yeah.
And yeah, he's in town a lot. Yeah. He
posts pictures on social media. Yeah, he posts pictures on social media. You know he's in Utah.
Right, and he comes up, and so I used to the head pro up there. I used to know it's not the same guy now, but when he was there, I knew him. Coach golf at Corner Canyon, and when his daughter played, and so he had told me about it. And then I know somebody else who lives in Manhattan who runs around in his circles a little bit. You know him too. So I knew about the guy. And then he was your hero, so that attracted me to him right off the bat. I used to quote him all the time. I used to get in the car, drive home, listen to him, and then come in the next day and quote him. And some of the quotes were good, and some of them were stupid. But he's just like everybody else. And so he loves himself some Utah. And he got into golf and blah, blah, blah. And yeah, he's one of these dudes that whether you care for him or not is not the point. But if you start making it in this business and you make it over 30 years, you got my respect.
Yeah, he's doing something right.
Right.
There are plenty of people who've been in and
that's
out.
That's anything.
Yeah, it's true.
I don't care what business. If you made it for that long of a time, you got to be doing something right. And if I agree, and in sports radio, if I agree with everything you say, you're probably not doing something right. I better disagree with you sometimes. That's the point. You got to get me to think. You got to get me to form my own opinions. And at the end of the day, as they say, we are just talking sports. So who really gives a crap
about whether that guy who you will never meet made a shot or not, hit a homer or not, caught a pass or not?
Yeah, you think this player's big time. I don't think so. You think this guy's a top 5 player. I don't think so. Whatever it might be. I mean, it's fun and games, man. You're supposed to debate it. You're supposed to have fun with it. It's supposed to be a release. It's not supposed to be every day. They asked Jason Hart now. He's been playing a bunch of minutes, I think he's playing the most minutes. And they asked him about it. Are you tired? He says, what are you talking about, man? I know people get up at 6 o'clock in the morning and they're working a 12-hour shift. And then they go home and they do it again the next day. You're asking me if I'm tired? This is ridiculous. Yeah, and did you see that Jaden Williams from Oklahoma City? They asked him, why do you seem so happy? He says, they used the word joy. Why do you seem like you're having joy? He said, joy? Is that what he said, joy? They said, yeah. He said, because I'm getting paid millions to play basketball.
Good answer. Good answer. Go Family Feud on you. Good answer.
He's like 23 years old, something like that. Come on. If I can't be happy doing this, when am I going to be happy?
Yeah.
That's what sports are. Fun.
Slap in the face all the people who are getting up at 4, 5, 6 in the morning to go to work. All the people working outdoors when the weather is brutal, either because it's 20 degrees in, some winter climate, or it's 120 degrees in Phoenix or Texas with the heat and humidity, Florida. You brought that up one morning. We were coming into work, and and they did this thing where they were building stuff just south of the arena. So the way we would drive in, we would see workers showing up on the construction site every morning, and the buildings were built, it seemed like they were built sequentially. So it probably wasn't every day for a couple of years, but it seemed like every day for a couple of years they were working on one of 3 different buildings, right? The hotels, the high rises they've got there. That one hotel is right across the street. I think it's is that a Marriott? You would know.
Yeah.
And as they build those, and some days it's nice at 7 o'clock in the morning, but man, coming in the winter, and you're like, it made you think of your dad. It was a different job and a different profession, but you just thought those guys are tough and they are grinders.
Yeah.
It's 6:45 in the morning. It's 20 degrees out. Snow, ice, whatever.
Wear your hat backwards if you want. Whatever. Who cares?
Okay, so the last reaction to this, and then we'll go to break. Do guys who wear caps backward, as Colin Coward says, look like couch movers? The first thing I thought when I read that when you posted that question last night, I didn't know you were going to post it. I just looked and I saw it and I thought, man, PK's going to have a rant. We start looking down at people who move couches, who move them for people who can't pick them up, who physically just can't do it for one reason or another. That's like first cousin to, that's the janitor, that you heard when you were a kid that is, makes you mad decades later. He's going to dump on couch movers? We need couch movers. You got a bad back? 82-year-old grandma who needs to move? Somebody's got to do it. What are we dumping on them for?
When I move, I ain't moving my couch. Are you kidding me?
Yeah, right? What are we dumping on them for? We need them. But anyway, so I saw that, and then I pulled down, I'm reading the comments, and then this, and I thought, this will just start a whole nother brawl. Humphrey posts, baseball caps backwards? Come on. Cowboy hats are worse. Granted, it serves a purpose, but this is not 1860. He wants to ban cowboy hats.
Okay.
Brian, it amazes me that people worry so much about what other people wear. I'm with you, Brian. Number one, don't think about it. And if I do, I think about it for 5 seconds because somebody brought it up, and then, back to my problems. All right, DJ and PK, we got to take a break. Quarterbacks on the move, transferring left and right. Who's hit? Who hasn't? Which young quarterback has the stuff to take a big leap forward? Somebody's going to do it, right? Dustin Smith, QB Elite, Spanish Fork High School head coach. We'll talk quarterbacks with him next right here on The Zone. DJ and PK, it's 97.5 The Zone. We're joined once again by Dustin Smith from QB Elite and Spanish Fork High, where he's the football coach, the head coach. Dustin, good morning.
Good morning, guys. Thanks for having me on.
Dustin, we have many questions about many quarterbacks, but before we get to them, I am intrigued watching all these quarterbacks transfer not once, but in many cases twice, playing at 3 schools in 3 years, 3 schools, some of them in the 4th or 5th year. And then I see the first family of football, the Mannings, and I see Archie's grandson, nephew to Eli and to Peyton, and Arch Manning is at Texas. He comes out of a spring game, third string, doesn't transfer, nothing, doesn't do social media, stays put. Does everybody have it wrong and the Mannings have figured something out? Because it just looks to me like he's got 3 people telling him, we got the NFL, calm down. We got the NFL. And maybe he doesn't maybe he's heard it so much, he doesn't even need to hear it anymore. Maybe they're done telling him. But it's so strikingly different from what's happening everywhere else in college football. It just keeps catching my eye. Can you shed any light on that?
Isn't that funny that when a kid doesn't transfer, it now makes news? It's happening so often that now when someone doesn't do it, it's like, wow, he didn't transfer. I hope that's the reason. I hope they realize that, look, you're an NFL talent. Just settle down, get your education, be part of a good program that produces good QBs, and just play ball. But yeah, he still has a couple years left, so I wouldn't be surprised if he transferred. I don't think that you can shut the door on that. But it was nice to see that he didn't, because I just read an article the other day from the AP that said that 4 of the 5 finishers in the Heisman Trophy balloting were quarterbacks who had transferred at one point in their college careers, and 2 of the last Heisman quarterbacks that were both transfers. And I know some colleges if I've met with quite a bit the last couple months. There's a kid down in Spanish Fork where I coach who's the number 1 recruit in Utah, and so I've met with 30, 40 different programs. And when this transfer stuff comes up, some of them have just said that when it comes to specifically quarterbacks, it's hard to even seriously go after the top high school quarterbacks because they know the kid's going to transfer at some point. So they're just strictly doing transfer portal guys.
But we see, Dustin, they're transferring at the high school level. So they probably have already transferred by the time they transfer.
Yeah, and that don't get me. Yeah, you get me started on that one, I'll get pretty animated pretty fast.
That's what we're trying to do. Go ahead.
Yeah, the high school transfer thing's been a joke for a lot of years, and I had a coach tell this particular kid at my school. He asked him why he hadn't transferred, and then he said something very interesting. This is a local head coach at a local university. He said, "Why haven't you transferred like some of these other high school kids to go buy a state championship?" And this kid said, "Well, he said, I go to school here," and he actually looked over at me and fist bumped me, and so I was refreshed to hear that because I've been nervous about it, of course. And the coach said, "I'm glad to hear that, because had I found out, or if I find out that you do transfer, or if you had been a transfer kid, you would be much less appealing to us." And he said, "We probably would stop recruiting you." Because again, they're starting to see the trend, the red flags, that if these kids are going to do it at the high school level, especially when they're already good players who can make it without, there's this for whatever reason, this opinion that if you don't go to certain schools, you all of a sudden don't know how to play football, and they're not going to find you, and you're not, that the school is the reason, the high school is the reason you made it to college, not your size, weight, speed, talent, ability. It's the school, and it's not. It's you. It's the kid. It's his measurables and his ability, and these coaches see these transfers happening at the high school level as much as they are, and they know that, well, geez, if he's going to do it to his high school buddies who he grew up playing with, you're dang sure we're probably going to see it at the college level when people start throwing serious money at him.
So on the one hand, we can decry all these transfers, and that's fun, and I think there's some truth to it. But on the other hand, there's people listening to this going, Well, yeah, if all the Heisman Trophy finalists transferred and if a bunch of the Heisman Trophy winners transferred, maybe those kids just made the best decision for them. And every situation is different, right? I mean, Caleb Williams is #1 pick in the draft. He transferred, but he transferred to follow a coach, and that's different than someone who's complaining about their playing time, right? So there's always these different bits of information that shape people's decision. So should we be that wound up about it?
It's tough right now because transferring can, at the college level, it can help everybody. You know, if you're a third or fourth string quarterback who's not going to play and you transfer, it can open up a chance for a school to have another scholarship to use maybe at another position. It gets a kid a chance to go somewhere else where he can maybe play, and it can help that program who takes that kid. So, you know, it's tough because there are some benefits to it. The problem is that the way the transferring is happening is it's the recruiting of these kids who are at the other schools, and they're trying to talk them into transferring. It's the same thing at the high school level, and the teaching of these kids that, you know, you got to have it now and you got to play now and everything. And if not, it's because it's where you're at is the problem. And I'm old school, so I'm more of the, hey, just dig your heels in and go earn the spot and you know, go take on the fight. But I get it. It's not the way it is. And, you know, but I when I was on a couple weeks ago with Hans and Scotty, I told a story of a coach, a big-time coach at a big-time university in here in America, talk about his program being the only program, and you'll figure out who I'm talking about here quickly, the only program in the country who has an owner. And he's saying this to me and a 17-year-old kid, and he asked me how much Robert Kraft and Jerry Jones were worth in the NFL. And then I had no idea, and he told me like $4 billion or $12 billion, and then he said, how much is Phil Knight worth? And he said $40 billion. And then he said, his point was, you'll be taken care of. And, you know, and so I told the kid, I said, well, take him at his word. He's not lying. They're going to take care of you if you go up there. But also take him at his word that there's an owner there and it's a business, which means if you don't produce, there's somebody else out there that they've got tentacles and fingers out there searching around for what other kid is out there, and they'll throw crazy amounts of money at that kid, and you might be gone immediately. So, you know, or not playing, and then you're thrown into the transfer portal. And, you know, what some of these schools are doing in the transfer portal right now is they're finding kids. They're waiting for these other schools to find these kids, find out what their NILs are, and then a day or two before the transfer portal closes, they're swooping in, offering the kid more money, getting the kid to leave. Then the transfer portal closes, and you've got a school that you know thought they had a kid coming in, and other kids who are now stuck because these guys come in and it's just a bidding war. And most of these transfers I don't think have to do with, well, if I go there I'll have a chance to win a Heisman. I think it simply has to do with who's going to pay me more.
Well, McKay Hilstead transferred from Utah State to BYU, and there's some talk that he gets there after spring ball, but that when camp starts in August, that he's got a legitimate chance to win the job in the 3 weeks before they get into game week for the first game. And you know of this player. Why do you think that's the case, if you think that's the case?
Well, he's one of the kids, too, that I was disappointed when I heard he was transferring. I was disappointed when I heard Bronson Barron was transferring from Weber State. He went out to Western Kentucky, and then now he's at Southern Utah. He was a local kid out of American Fork High School. You know, I was disappointed when Jackson Dart left USC, and so I am happy for the Utah quarterbacks, and I'm happy that BYU and Utah are recruiting local quarterbacks again, because there was a large span there where they weren't, and I think their best quarterbacks, the Utah kids are showing that they can play, not just here locally. And you look at BYU's success recently at the quarterback position, it's been from Utah kids. but kids who are going and starting at Boise State and at Ole Miss and who are backups right now. There's a backup at USC who's from Utah, quarterback. And in the case of McKay, I was bummed that he left Utah State because I know that they were planning on him there. And he and Cooper Laga, another Utah kid Cooper ended up at Tulsa, both left Utah State. McKay is a very unique player who has some very unique characteristics about him, not just athletically. He's of the two big-time QBs they've had come through BYU, meaning when I say big-time, I'm talking Zach and Jaron. McKay is quicker and more agile than both of them, and Jaron and Zach are super athletic kids. McKay is quicker and faster and accelerates faster. Now, he's not as tall as them, but he can make the same throws. He's got the arm. He doesn't have quite the arm strength that those two had yet, but I think he can get there. But his release is so quick. He's a smart sponge type kid. He learns quickly, and that's why I think he's going to get in there. I don't know the quarterback room super well at BYU. I've worked with one of their guys, but the other guys, I know their transfers, and I don't know if they've had the kind of big time, Division I reps yet to really prove themselves. McKay did up at Utah State. He did have some games where he had to start and play, and he did well. And he's a gritty, tough kid that I think is going to endear himself to the offensive line really fast and to the receivers and the coaching staff there. And, I don't want to put too much pressure, but I think he's a special talent who, when he gets out there and gets doing his thing, is going to be fun to watch. And he's a glue guy. He's a guy that other on the team are going to stick to just because of his personality and his work ethic and his humility. And so I think it's a great fit for him. I think it's a great get for BYU. And he's a BYU type kid who's just going to put his head down and work. And he does have some very unique skill sets.
Are you worried about his lack of size? Because we've heard from multiple people who thought he took a big hit, got hurt, and after that wasn't the same. What about durability?
Yeah, I'm worried about his size, his weight, not his height. He's put weight on and gotten stronger. But, they were saying the same thing about Jaron when he took his concussion, ironically up at the big one up in Logan, up at Utah State. But I'm not overly concerned by that. He's putting on weight. I mean, he's pushing 190 pounds. He's just not very tall. I mean, he's 5'10". But I think that's, although it would be ideal to have a taller quarterback, and there are some benefits to that, I think that's overhyped, and we've seen plenty of quarterbacks 6 feet and shorter who have been very good at especially at the college level. Most of the quarterbacks the last 5 years that have played in national championship games in NCAA have been 6 feet or shorter and done great. So the height thing doesn't get me, but the durability, especially from guys who like to move and run, Jaron Hall had to learn this at BYU to, not try to play running back there, to learn how to get out of bounds and slide and throw the ball away. And when he did that, he became a much more efficient player and a much more valuable because he was available. He wasn't getting hurt as much. So, and he learned the hard way in the NFL when he took off and tried to run for a touchdown against the Falcons and took a big hit and dealt with another concussion. So I'm hoping, crossing my fingers, that McKay has learned his lesson and that, yes, he uses his legs to be efficient in the pocket and to extend plays and to maybe make some passing plays, but not to get down there and take linebackers on 5, 6, 7 yards downfield. Because if that's the case, then yes, I am worried about it. Every quarterback, but especially a guy who's a little bit smaller, taking some hits from some of these guys and then getting hurt because he is a smaller kid.
I wanted to bring up the star rating because that gets our attention. 3-star, okay, halfway decent. 4-star, we start to get excited. 5-star, we're over the moon in excitement. You take a kid like the Sam Hewart, has the lineage with the Hewitt brothers in there in Seattle area, and he's a 5-star. He goes to Washington, stays local. They bring in Penix. He takes off, goes to Cal Poly, and now he's transferring to Utah. He's a 5-star, but he's in at least his 3rd year going on, if not his 4th year, and really hasn't had the big-time success. What do you make of this star ranking in terms of its validity? Because there seems like there's a lot of kids that they hand out these star rankings almost like candy in Halloween, and it sort of has to follow them, and if they don't live up to it, they're a disappointment.
Yeah, that's I think unfortunate for the kids. That's another subject when you start talking about mental health and athletes and things. These star rankings and the social media pressure is a real thing. It's a real thing with college athletes and high school athletes. 30% of Division I athletes in a recent survey admitted to having a serious mental health issue, but only 10% of them are actually talking about it. And I personally assign some of the blame to some of these things, the unbelievable pressure that are being put on kids, even before high school, to live up to some standard set by some guy who watches some film and throws a star next to a kid or lists him on the top 10 whatever list of whatever position at his sport. And then there's this expectation that he or she has to live up to it. And I've never looked at the star rating personally to judge a kid. I mean, sometimes I've seen kids and seen the star next to them and thought, I didn't know that. I wonder how they figure that out. Is it because this kid spent all the money to go to all these camps to be seen by all these guys? There's got to be some financial incentive to. I'm not trying to say that it's a dirty business, but I do wonder at some point if there's some cahoots there where it's this camp business that makes a lot of guys a lot of money out there, and then there's the fear of missing out by these dads, and so they feel like they got to get their kids to all these things because that's how they're going to earn their star rating. And I do think that the star rating is a little bit more applicable when you're talking about bigger offensive linemen because there's a lot of big guys out there, but when they can see that the kid's he's mobile and he can bend and he's flexible and he can run and some of those things that might help you decide whether or not the kid's just big or is he big and athletic. And the star system, I think, can help weed out some of that. When it comes to the quarterback spot, though, I don't take a whole lot of relevance or give it a whole lot of attention, the star rating. It's the same thing with things like the Nike Elite 11 that's had some, you think the best quarterbacks are out there. I've gone and watched those I've watched the Elite 11s in Chicago. I've watched it in Dallas. I've watched kids from Utah go out to them who were better quarterbacks than other kids around the country but didn't have offers yet. And because they didn't have offers, they were immediately put into groups with the kids who didn't. And the kids who had the offers were in the big group, and those guys were the guys selected to be to advance, to be the Elite 11, because I think they were safe picks, right? If this kid's got 5 offers already and we pick him to be part of the Elite 11, then if we're wrong, everybody was wrong. It bothered me because I would look out there and say, well, just be a coach and recognize that this other kid over here that maybe is a 2-star or didn't grow up in Southern California or Texas or whatever is a better quarterback. He can make the throws. He's athletic. He's physical. Like, take a look at the kid and have some guts to say, wait a minute, I think this kid's better. And maybe you're right, maybe you're wrong. But you go look through the list of, we got a lot of Elite 11 quarterbacks and a lot of 4- and 5-star quarterbacks who ended up being just average guys or below average guys. And most of those guys are a for sure transfer guy because of what you just said, the expectation to get in there and play right away. If they don't, that they're looking, they probably have people behind them that are looking, and they are eyes up, aware of who else is out there and ready to jump. And so anytime I see a high star guy go to a school, I'm to the earlier point, David, that you made, I would be less surprised if the kid transferred and more surprised if he actually stayed and fought it out at the school.
Last thing, and we're out of time a while ago, but real quick, with Utah, everybody knows what they got as starting quarterback because we've seen him play. Do you have any sense, enough relationships with enough guys to know what's going to happen with backup? I mean, they just got another transfer in here with Heward that PK just referenced. Do you know how that's going to, or is that a mystery, the backup, the race to the backup, and potentially the next starter, is that a mystery to you?
I don't know enough to give a much of an answer to that. I think they're going to give Isaac Wilson every possible chance there to be the guy, because if they don't, I think he falls into that category that we just talked about, that he might not be around for very long. So I think they're going to give him every possible opportunity in the fear that they would lose him.
Dustin, we appreciate the time, as always. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks, guys.
Dustin Smith, QB Elite and Spanish Fork High School head coach, talking quarterbacks. Kurt Schmid, Real Salt Lake Chief Soccer Officer. Coming up next, Ron McBride, former Ute coach with one of his guys now on the BYU staff. Well, maybe more than one of his guys on the BYU staff. We will talk with him about the Utes and Cougars at 9 o'clock. Stay with us.
This is Jake Scott and Ben Anderson.
He is Stephen Ellis, the associate editor / prospect analyst for the Daily Faceoff. Give us your thoughts on this roster coming up from Phoenix to Utah.
It's a good group with good young guys. You know, obviously you look at the last couple of years and it's been a difficult run for the Coyotes, but I think now with this team, hopefully more money can be spent to make this team competitive. They got a really good young group with Logan Cooley. You should be getting very excited about him. He's one of the best young players in the league. If you like physicality, Coyotes have probably the largest prospect pool in terms of actual physical size. So they're going to be a fun team to watch. It's going to be a couple of years, but I think, you know, it's new, exciting, and we've seen with Seattle and Vegas, when new teams come in the league, people are interested in trying to go there and making an impact, and I think that could be pretty enticing.
Hear Jake Scott and Ben Anderson every day from 10 to noon on 97.5 The KSL Sports Zone.
DJ and PK, it's 97.5 The Zone. We're joined now by Kurt Schmid, Real Salt Lake Chief Soccer Officer. Kurt, good morning. Welcome back to the show.
Morning. Thank you.
So on a scale of 1 to 10, how irritated were you when the fourth goal hit the back of the net in New Mexico?
Very, very irritated. I don't know what the number would be, but obviously, nobody likes to lose, and, we're all competitive people. So, yeah, I mean, not very happy.
Did that goal, of the 4 goals, did that goal bother you the most, or was it the 2 early ones that were given up where guys had just had tons of time and space, 20, 25 yards in goal, with the entire goal to shoot at, which puts a goalkeeper in a pretty bad spot?
I don't think we concede any goals that don't irritate me, so it's really hard for me to grade them, to be honest. But, I'd say all of them were equally troubling from the standpoint of getting a result down there, and it was – none of them were particularly extra angering, but all of them were equally upsetting.
How upset are you that you're out of the competition? Because it does lead to a lot of games in a really short period of time that can impact the MLS results. At the same time, the club, the off-stated goal, win trophies. Well, you have to win a trophy before you can win multiple trophies. So how does that go over in the bigger picture?
Yeah, I think we want to win every competition we enter. So being out of one of those is obviously a difficult pill to swallow, and it's one less thing that we can win this season, which is troubling. But we take it as it is now, and we try and adapt and change and take what positives we can. You mentioned schedule congestion, that's obviously something that can hopefully take a little bit of physical pressure off the guys and let us focus, mentally and physically on the league. But, all that being said, we obviously very upset that we're out of the competition and don't have the ability to win that trophy this season.
Last weekend, RSL shuts out Sporting Kansas City. And I thought going into that game, Sporting's coming off a 3-3 draw and another 3-3 draw and a 3-2 loss. I mean, basically, April was Golapalooza for them. And I thought it was going to continue. And then that game is scoreless after 80 minutes, and obviously Chicho gets a header and RSL gets the win. Now, should I bite because you're playing the Galaxy They got two center backs whose combined age is 71 or 2 or something. I mean, they are starting old center backs, and they are giving up a lot of goals, third or fourth worst in the West. But they also score the most goals in the Western Conference. So should I buy into the Golapalooza storyline, or should I expect something different, or is it impossible to know what's going to happen?
Well, I would say it's impossible to know, and I think we always try to relate one game to the next, and in reality, each thing is its own animal. And so what we've done before this, what they've done before this, none of that matters when the whistle blows. So we're gonna have to go into it and keep it tight at the back, and hopefully get a couple going forward. And the boys are preparing as much as they can and as much as they do for any other game, and I think, we're going to go into it just not worried about that, right? And not worried about what they've done, what we've done, and just try to play our game, and maintain possession, create chances, and, limit their dangerous chances.
Well, that kind of wrecks my next question. Dang it. I'm going to go with it anyway. What the heck? I'm hard-headed. In the last 4, set aside the Open Cup game in New Mexico, and there was heavy rotation, the starting 11, and there were guys starting who don't normally start. It was a mix of starters and guys who don't play so much. But in your last 4 MLS games, giving up 1 goal. Now, I know that defending comes down to everything and all 11 guys, and more than that because you're going to sub in, so guy 12, 13, and 14 as they come on are a part of that. But is there... Aside from it is everything, is there anything that really stands out in there as a common link? Like, we are really good at this and we can hang our hat on this.
Look, I think, if you look at this season, maybe compared to last season, people say what's the best defense is sometimes a good offense. And I think that we've been able to maintain possession a little better and create a little more sustained danger on the attacking end, which just limits the other team's opportunity to attack, right? And if we ask our defenders, no matter how they're playing in the moment, if we just ask them to do less, to defend less, to make fewer saves, to make fewer tackles, then obviously they're going to have a greater chance of success when doing that. So I think that's part of the story as well. I think we've had a lot of good consistency and good relationships along the back line. Zach's been very good for us in goal. Justin and Brian Vera, at center back, they've been steady, and even when we've had guys come in, whether it's been Bodie or Oviedo for a game, or Philip Quinton, who's new to the group, they've stepped up and not skipped a beat. So I think both of those things are critical elements to it, and have been super helpful to us, keeping a strong defensive record.
Kurt Schmid joining us, Real Salt Lake Chief Soccer Officer. RSL is in first place in the 14-team Western Conference. They're in the top spot on 21 points. LA is third. They're just 2 points back. With a win at home, LA would leapfrog RSL in the standings. Having said that, we're only a third of the way through the season, and the top 5 teams are only separated by 3 points. So it's obvious that anything could happen. But when I look at these 5 teams, the one thing I think they have in common here is tremendous. They are playing so well on the road in a league where the road has been really difficult. They all have 3 wins. They all have winning records. They all have at least 10 points on the road already. Is it in part because there's less travel as the league has gotten bigger? There's fewer coast-to-coast flights and all that? Is there something else going on here? How do we explain a years-long trend being reversed in a short period of time, but being reversed by 5 teams at the same time?
That's a really good question. We've actually looked into this quite a bit. I think something shifted during COVID, and I think that's maybe more explainable. I think the home team advantage during the COVID season was kind of flipped on its head, or at least reduced quite a bit. And I forget the exact percentage, but obviously that's somewhat understandable given a lot of empty stadiums and maybe we switched to charter flights and things like that maybe played into it. But I think what's a little more confusing maybe is that's persisted even with fans back in the stadiums and things kind of settling into more of a normal groove. The typical large home skew in MLS has kind of reduced a bit in the last few years. So I don't know exactly if there's one factor that really influences that. It's always been a road mentality has always been a key element to winning on the road in this league. And I think a lot of teams can come in on the road and decide, hey, we're going to keep it tight. We're not going to give anything up. We're going to play differently on the road than we play at home. I think what we've done the last couple of years is really take the same mentality on the road that we have at home, which is we're just going to play our game and do our thing. And so I think that's been helpful in helping get some of those road results. And, teams at home maybe play a little more open than they would on the road at times if they are going to shift. And so maybe there's a little more space for teams to play when they go on the road if they're willing to be a little more expansive and take a little more risk.
This is the time of year with the transfer window and the European season ending where everybody, and I see The Athletic has done it, but lots of national websites will have a list of players who are available and who may be making the jump from Europe to Major League Soccer and joining teams here midseason. You went out and got Chicho Arango. He joined you at midseason last year, maybe 2/3 of the way through the season. Do you expect to be active, and do you think there could be a major addition to the team in this summer window?
Major addition is a very interesting qualifier. I'll leave that to you whether it's major or not. I think we're gonna look to improve the team. I think you have to in any sport, but really in MLS, I think you can't really stand pat when everyone else is improving. You've got to make adjustments. You got to tweak things. You got to keep things competitive in the squad. So we'll look to make some improvements in the summer as we move forward and give us a bit of a push into the end of the season. But as far as, major or all these types of things, I'll let you guys assess that hopefully after we make some signings. But
I'll tweak it. I'll tweak it right now. Instead of major, let's say somebody who would go into the starting 11 more often than not.
Yeah, I mean, look, yes. If we're adding a piece, a piece in the summer like that, we want it to be someone who's gonna compete and contribute, on the field. And you can't contribute to the team if you're not on the field. And if you're a starter, you're going to help more than if you're on the bench. So it is somewhat, we are looking to bring in someone that can push our 11, the guys that are playing every week.
Do you think you would use a DP slot in an acquisition like this?
Do I think? I mean, it's a possibility. No guarantees, no promises. I mean, it's not about spending a certain threshold of money. I think it's about finding the right fit, right? So, we're gonna look to add a piece that has quality, and generally those guys are a little more expensive. But as far as DP or TAM or U22 or any of this stuff, we're not targeting that specifically. We're trying to just find the right fit to add enough quality and experience and boost the squad going into the end of the season.
Given all of this, I think people are always curious about what would it be like to work in professional sports. Most people use the phrase summer vacation because, the kids are out of school and America, the stats show we all get in cars and get on airplanes and go places. Do soccer executives get to do that, or does the demand of the schedule make summer vacation a term that other people use?
Do I get a summer vacation? Is that what you're asking?
Yeah. Well, and not just you, but just industry wide. Other front offices. Yeah, we got you on the phone, so you. But
yeah, I mean, maybe not in the traditional sense, but we try to find moments here and there. It's kind of for us, for me, in soccer, obviously, it maybe tracks the transfer window a little more, because the transfer window is obviously open in the summer and it's open pretty late in the spring. So we can't. It's hard to be on the away from home or away from the office too much when those deals are happening and we need to be working on them. But around that, I guess, window, yes, summer, there's maybe a vacation here and there and there.
All right. Well, if you find a long weekend somewhere, enjoy it. Good luck with that, and good luck with acquisitions this summer. And thanks for joining us for a few minutes here, Kurt. We appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks.
Kurt Schmid, Real Salt Lake Chief Soccer Officer. They're in first place in the West, and they are in L.A. to play the third place Galaxy Saturday night. And then Wednesday, they'll be back home to face the Seattle Sounders, who traditionally are very good, but this year off to a terrible start. 11th place in the West. Had a bunch of injuries, and they're struggling. DJ and PK, it's 97.5 The Zone. Ron McBride's going to be in studio talking college football. He's got former players all over the place, working all kinds of jobs. Some you'd expect, some you wouldn't. But that gives him a lot of info on the Utes and Cougars, and we'll talk with him coming up at 9 o'clock right here on The Zone.
Accessing. This is Hans Olsen and Scotty G.
Maybe Indiana's a place where you can have metal-piercing bullets. Can't imagine those are legal anywhere. Maybe they are. Metal-piercing bullets? Jeez. What are you facing? What's the guy with a metal suit?
The Tin Man?
No. The guy from Weird Science plays him. Something Junior. He wears a metal suit, and like I was going to say...
RoboCop?
No, it's a guy that wears metal and flies around.
The Rocket Man. Rocketeer, sorry.
We've given you so many guys with metal suits.
You're not close.
I'm sorry. Why are you mad at us?
Yeah.
Look
How did you get
it?
it?
Okay. I
Man in metal suit.
Iron Man.
Oh,
How did you guys not get Iron Man?
All the Iron Man I could think of.
Come up with 30 things with guys dressed in metal. 30.
Truth is, I am Iron Man.
Catch Hanson Scotty weekdays from noon to 3 on 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.
Nominate the youth sports volunteer that you know for the Hercules Hero of the Week. Submit your nomination at kslsports.com/contest, and then listen every Thursday afternoon to JJ and Alex for the winner. Help us celebrate the efforts of those volunteers making an impact for the Hercules Hero of the Week, sponsored by Hercules Credit Union and Beehive Meals.
DJ and PK, it's 97.5 The Zone. Ron McBride, former Utah and Weber State football coach, is going to join us next to talk college football. He's got ties, obviously, at Utah, but now with former Utes on the staff down at BYU, he's got a lot of ties there as well. So we will talk with him about that. Coming up, we've got we got a question up on Facebook. Both road teams won in the NBA. How good are these playoffs? This is an opportunity for a lot of you to proclaim your love for the NHL playoffs and to dismiss the NBA playoffs. But, PK, I think the fact is these are pretty good playoffs because multiple teams can win, and we just don't know yet. You may think Denver's coming back. You may think Minnesota's going to finish them off. You may think Boston with the best regular season will pull this off. But there are at least 3 teams who have a legit chance to win this. And, of course, if you're a fan of one of the other 5 teams, certainly Oklahoma City, you're like, why are you dismissing us right now? I think that makes it a good NBA playoffs. It's not a foregone conclusion. There were a few years ago, we were waiting through 6 weeks of playoffs because we all thought it was going to be Golden State and Cleveland. You thought it, I thought it, Jake thought it, 90% of our listeners thought it, and then we all turned out to be right. So that predictability, maybe it's good once in a while because you got 2 giant teams and we can't wait for them to meet. But it was happening year after year. This is better. I like it when it's wide open, and I'm really not sure what's going to happen.
Well, it's personal preference. I can't argue with that. I mean, whatever you like, that's what you like.
Do you like it?
I like the postseason. I don't care what happens. There's something to be said for dynasties, which we don't really have, but great teams. How long can they ride it out? Because you look at it, you're in the middle of it. Okay, you may get bored for an extent, but now that you look back, it seemed like Golden State's run was about a week long.
It wasn't. It was. I think that was a legit dynasty.
But
I don't think we're
over.
that far removed. I do think it's over,
100%. But it seems like it went so fast. You know, you look at I view sports as entertainment, as a TV show, and you look at the great TV shows, whether it's Seinfeld or go all the way back, was Lucy Ball the first sitcom? Okay, she was going to do something stupid, and it was going to be head scratching, and she'd go, yeah. And then Seinfeld was going to do his thing. So you knew what was going to happen, but yet they still watched in phenomenal numbers. And that's the way I view if it's the team that's really, really good and continues to be good. I probably know what's going to happen, but I'm still entertained by it. And so I don't necessarily mind that. Because if that's the case, then you're watching great players, right? And so you have that opportunity to watch, and you're probably seeing something that very few folks can do, and those 2 or 3 guys can do it. That's great, too. I mean, it's the whole thing with the Caitlin Clark thing. She's doing things that we haven't seen done. And we knew this year when we watched her, she was probably going to go for 30 or 40, but yet people were enthralled by her. And so there's something to be said for that, too. There's also something to be said for the surprise teams. I actually think that in the West, all 4 teams could win the title. Wouldn't be shocked if any of that happened, whichever team it might be, whoever it might be. I don't know who it's going to be. But if Denver comes back,
Well, that wouldn't totally blow me away. It would be incredible. It would increase the drama level. So that's why I want to watch. And if they don't, well, Minnesota's the new kids on the block. And that's fun to see. Anthony Edwards, he was doing a national interview on one of the Good Morning shows, or Good Morning America, or whatever they are, CBS Morning. I don't know what they got names. Today Show. My default is the Today Show. I always go to the Today Show. I don't even know if that's the name of them. But you watch him, and okay, man, he's got the look, right? He's got the smile. I don't know enough about his personality yet. I don't know enough about his background. He played at Georgia, which is a football school, and these kids are one and done now, so you don't get to develop them in the way. Even you did Magic Johnson, who played for 2 years, and Michael Jordan, I think, played for 3. So you watch those guys a little bit, and so you have a little bit of a history going into it. And plus, they are, playing for basketball powers at the time. But can Anthony Edwards? Can he literally be the next Jordan? Wow, what a standard. He doesn't want to hear any of it, and I don't blame him. But I'm sure looking forward to watching it to see if he can do it.
If he does it, that'll be 6 different champions in 6 years. Actually, as long as anybody other than Denver. If Denver repeats, obviously that breaks the streak. But anybody else would be a new champ, and it'd be 6 champs in 6 years. So we are right now as far away from a dynasty as we can get.
Yeah, I'm okay either way.
Yeah. All right, DJ PK, we're going to take a break. Ronnie Mack is talking football. Utes and Cougars. Next, stay with us. DJ PK, and we are about to lose control of the show. Ron McBride is in studio, ready to seize the microphone, to talk football, filibuster, and I don't know what's going to happen.
And
the first thing we have to do is get you a headset, Mac.
Yeah.
So, all right, first off, just to set this, because people hear you and they think, Ron McBride, Utah and Weber State coach, he's not going to know anything about any other team. But you come in here wearing a Cal Poly San Luis Obispo sweatshirt. So what's your tie to Cal Poly? Who do you know?
My granddaughter goes to school there. She's graduating.
Okay, so it's not a football tie.
Yeah.
All right, your granddaughter.
Graduating in June. So, and okay. I like the sweatshirt.
Okay, there it is. You like the green. All right.
Yeah.
There you go. You like the sweatshirt.
But I do like the school. I went to 3, when I was coaching in junior college, I went 3 different summers to get a master's degree at Cal Poly. Loved it.
Okay. So how many schools are your ex-players coaching at or an analyst at? How many schools do you have ties where you can literally pick somebody up and get the dirt behind the scenes?
Well, I think Utah State, obviously Weber, Utah, BYU, Fresno State, San Jose State, Washington, Oregon State.
You're wired in.
Yeah,
you're wired in.
Yeah, I could pretty much tell you what's
and you're going out with former players and doing like clinics on Saturday. So I assume that some of the kids you're working with, some of them are just trying to be better high school players, and then they'll be done. But some of those players probably also go on. So you probably know players in other programs too.
Oh yeah, absolutely. So I still train 3 or maybe 4 or 5 guys that come back from different schools. Xavier, Carleton is one of them. I got a couple of the U football players that are still playing. They'll come and work out. Junior, particularly. In fact, Chinoso just came back from New York, so he'll be working out. And then Kennedy, he's playing someplace in the Midwest, and he contacted me, so I'll work with him probably tomorrow, and so it's
you're not letting the grass grow in between your toes, man. You're on the move.
It seems seems like I'm a little busier than what I. All
right, one of the reasons he's here, and we'll get into this later on, is that Mac has a foundation, and it raises money to the proceeds go to benefit at-risk kids and youth in Title I schools, and you fund after-school programs. And the number's over $500,000 now. Is it over $750,000, your foundation budget?
Yeah.
It's going through the roof. And so this is going to be a big deal, this concert.
Well, the concert thing is huge because it's a huge investment for us, and it's something different than what we've done. And the complex has done a really good job of leading us in the right direction. And then MJ and Joanne and Joni and Kristen and
they're working it, putting together the entire
Christine,
concert and all the details. All right, well, Ryan Bingham with the Texas Gentlemen, Saturday, June 22nd at the Complex. You can get your tickets at thecomplexslc.com. Ryan Bingham is on the show Yellowstone, so he's kind of a big deal. Yeah. And you've already sold over half the tickets, 2,500, and you're like 1,400. Yeah. All right, well, we'll get into more in the concert in just a second. But I know PK wants to talk a little football. PK, which school do you want to dive in on now that you know he's got all these contacts?
Well, I already knew he had all these contacts.
Did, yes.
He's had them for 100 years, I think. I wanted to ask you a question that is...
I can't hear him.
Go ahead.
I can't hear PK.
Okay, I'll repeat it for you. Go ahead, PK, ask it.
I want to know, Utah, 17 defensive backs in Kyle Whittingham's tenure and 2 guys this year. How do they keep on doing it?
How do they keep this defensive train rolling, the defensive backs? There have been so many defensive backs who've gone to the NFL. How do they keep reloading? How do they keep doing this?
You talk
Utah. Utah defensive backs, one guy to the NFL after another.
Well, first of all, they've done a really good job of identifying players. And then they've done a really good job of recruiting them. And then, and obviously Sharif is the corner coach. And Sharif is a personality guy plus a great teacher. And if you ever watch Sharif in practice, he never takes his eye off the DBs in practice. He's always in a position where he can coach. He's always either behind them or he's in a position where he can relay information. So I think that he's and Utah also plays a lot of press man coverage. So they recruit corners that can play press man, and that's.
I think the elite high school corners who want to go to the NFL know they have to play press man, and other coaches are maybe a little worried about committing to that because you can get burned and give up a big play.
Yeah, so Utah has a defense that's been put together for many years, and they've made adjustments to it, but basically. They're going to recruit press man corners, and they're going to recruit safeties that can really fill certain areas and guys who are smart.
When you say they put it together for a lot of years, obviously Kyle's been the head coach for 20 years. Right. Morgan's been on the staff the whole time, and when Kalani left, Morgan got to be the defensive coordinator. So I think a lot of Ute fans know that. A portion of the longtime fans know what I'm about to get to with you. And that is the consistency in the program goes back further because you hired Kyle 30 years ago.
Right.
And you hired Kyle partly because you'd hired his dad.
Right.
So when you talk about when Kyle is doing stuff right now or when he says stuff in a post game, do you literally hear Fred Whittingham's voice from a coach's meeting? Do you literally think, well, of course you're doing that, Kyle, because that's what your dad did in 1970, whatever.
Well, Fred would be interested in the meetings. But Kyle is an extremely smart person. I mean, he's very analytical, and he goes a lot on stats and on different things that he sees. And I think fortunately for him, he's hired some really good football coaches that are all know the system and have been in the system, and it's easy for them to teach what they're doing.
When you look at the philosophy of being able to take these guys that aren't considered big-time players, like Cole Bishop, and I don't remember anything that we're all excited about when he commits and when he signs. The thing that's impressive to me is they don't necessarily have these top 10 recruiting classes, but year after year they're producing results. What makes a coach being able to successfully recruit and be able to figure out who that player is and who that player can become 2 to 3 years down the line? Because to me, that is so impressive.
Well, exactly, and I believe if I'm right, Cole Bishop was from Georgia, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so I recruited Georgia when I was at Kentucky, and we also recruited Georgia when I was at Utah. And first of all, the Georgia kids love football. I mean, that's a way of life to them. So you take a kid out of Georgia, and especially a kid that's productive, you're going to get everything you can get out of them, because that's a way of life for those kids. You know, it's not just part of their life; it is their life. And so you get a good Georgia kid, you got yourself a football guy, you know, and he's going to do everything he can do to be successful.
This probably isn't a fair characterization completely, but maybe it's partially on board, so you can tweak it a little bit. When I hear California football player, I know they're kids who are all in, but there's a lot of multi-sport athletes in California. When I hear Texas and Florida, I know they have multi-sport athletes, but I usually think that kid's all in on football because the football culture is so strong in those states. They're less likely to be multi-sport. They're more likely to be in 7-on-7 and doing football year-round. And from what you say, I feel like Georgia is more Texas and more Florida than it is California. Is that true?
Well, just the culture, you know, is just it's all about football. And a lot of kids, you know, they play football, basketball, run track, particularly, you know. So you get the kid, especially the speed guys. You know, you'll see them in track just because they want to get faster and they want to train the twitch to be faster. And then a lot of it depends on the head football coach. Could be a baseball coach, he could be a basketball coach, and usually, if depending on what other sport that head coach or assistant coach coaches, that he'll take his good athletes to that sport and then kind of intermix it with football.
Do you think with the teams going into the Big 12 now, because you mentioned Texas obviously, and the Big 12 along with the SEC and some other conferences are going to be in Texas, how much do you think that recruiting could potentially change or improve for both BYU and Utah with the Big 12 starting up for both schools?
Well, I think it won't affect Utah too much, you know, because I think they've already established areas that they recruit. They like Texas kids. They like to look in the South. They'll take a kid from Alabama. They'll take a kid from Georgia. And they've kind of, you know, they have people on their staff that can recruit these areas. Now, I think with Brigham Young now, and just looking at their current staff now, you know, I don't know if Gary's allowed to recruit, and obviously Gary would have a good eye on national players. Chad is down there now, and he also has recruited pretty much a lot of areas of the country. So it depends where their assistant coaches may have contacts. And the contacts have a lot to do with, you know, that high school coach saying, hey, I think you go with this guy. This guy's really going to be good for you. So I think, and it's a little limited depending on who you have on your staff.
I'm old enough to remember the Big Five huddle.
Yeah.
And in the 90s, all the college football coaches came together, and it was one massive press conference. You get quotes from everybody.
Right.
And Utah State and BYU coaches made the trip to Salt Lake to be a part of it. And before a rivalry game, somebody was asking you, and you were at the podium, they were asking you about your relationship with Lavelle and all the intensity in the BYU-Utah rivalry. And you said, well, I like Lavelle, but I don't like BYU. And you got a huge laugh. People just guffawing nonstop. Now, you've got multiple guys on the Cougar staff, and you're sitting here wearing a University of Utah ball cap with your Cal Poly San Luis Obispo sweatshirt for your granddaughter is at Cal Poly.
Right.
So when BYU's playing, and it's a close game in the fourth quarter, have you put all the other stuff away, and do you cheer for BYU to win because you want your guys to win?
Well, I go down, and I've been down there 3 or 4 times to watch practice at BYU. And TJ, who I worked with at Wisconsin, at Utah State, at Oregon State. He's the offensive line coach now, and obviously Gary's down there now, Chad's down there, so you go down there, and first guy you see is Gary with this huge BYU shirt on, and it looks like it's a neon sign, and of course Kalani was at Utah for a long time, and also the A-Rod was down there, and so was the
Jay Hill.
And
you recruited Jay Hill, didn't you?
Yeah.
Out of Rick's College. You played at the U for 2 years.
And Sione Puha, they were all, basically.
Sione was at one of your foundation board meetings one day talking about what he was going to do and how he wanted to impact kids and what his plan was, because he'd already been doing some of it, but he's going to roll it into the foundation. And at the next meeting, somebody said, well, where did that go with Sione? And you're like, nowhere. He took a job at BYU.
Yeah. And so I asked him, I said, why would you do that? And then he said, because they don't work on Sunday, and he's big in the church, and so he said, yeah, because they don't work on Sundays. He said, and he had, so that's why he.
That's why he took it.
That's why he took it. Yeah.
Big question for you, Mac. When is Tile going to hang it up?
Well, I tell you what, he has a nice football team. He has really good coaches, and he has a good system. So I can't answer that question for him. But right now, everything is really good, because he's got a bunch of people that work there that understand what has to be done. So he can direct them, but they know what. In other words, Morgan knows what on the defensive side what they have to do. And Jim Harding is an excellent recruiter, the offensive line coach. And then it's on and on. They just have and everybody that works there, from the secretaries to whomever you talk to in the building, it's all about Utah football. It's not all about where they can get their next job.
So he's got too good a thing going to walk away from.
Well, I think he has a very good thing going now. Who knows? But he likes to play golf. He likes Hawaii. He likes certain things. He loves his family. So certain things that he really likes to do. But he takes a couple of weeks in the summer. He usually goes and plays golf and goes to Hawaii or whatever, and he'll take other time and so I think he kind of had, I'm not saying he hasn't made. I'm just saying that he's done a really good job of putting together all the pieces.
He's worked really hard to get it to this point, so why run away from it? Well, there are other things in life, and he may choose to pursue them one day. But if he's coaching there in a couple of years, you're not going to be surprised.
No. I mean, and it just depends. He's certain things he likes to do. Maybe that'll
carry the day and win out and take him down a different path.
But we're seeing these coaches, some of these guys, and Nick Saban talked about how, with the NIL, the things have changed so dramatically, and that you have to recruit kids to come to your roster, then you have to recruit kids to stay on your roster, and you have to worry about how much they're getting paid and all that stuff. The business and the transfer portal has changed so dramatically over the last few years. You wonder if guys who have been coaching a certain way and they've got this system and it's worked really well, if they say, yeah, but that's not the way it is anymore. So how do you think about that?
Well, yeah, a lot of the older coaches obviously don't like it because you have less and less control. But, just speaking from, when I was at Fresno, for instance, over the weekend, they had a long talk with a couple of the assistant coaches about their NLI, what they're doing with it. Mm-hmm. And it's, so they can't afford what somebody else can afford. And I think at Jeff's time of life, the head coach, I think this thing weighs on him. and then the assistant coaches there have a little more to worry about because they don't have all the surrounding people to help them.
Right.
So I think it's more difficult, and then to raise the money that you need to pay a player would, for instance, and I'm only guessing. Let's say Fresno has X amount of money for 4 players, and it would probably be like $4,000 a month or something, in that category. Okay, and let's say with Cam Rising, so I think his deal is around $2 million. I think, I don't know exactly, but that's what you hear on the street. And then so for instance, Utah will have a pot of money, X amount of money from X whatever boosters, and that's what they have to spend on a player that they may need to pay money for. And so from the San Jose's, the Utah States, and that it's a different deal.
Ron McBride in studio. We'll talk some specifics about the Ute and Cougar teams next. He's pitching a concert. Ryan Bingham, you've seen him on the show Yellowstone. Ryan Bingham, country music star also with the Texas Gentlemen. The concert is at the Complex on Saturday, June 22nd. You can get your tickets at thecomplexslc.com. The proceeds go to benefit the Ron McBride Foundation and after-school programs for at-risk kids and youth in Title I schools. And he's working with schools in the Ogden School District, the Salt Lake District, the Jordan District, Canyons District. It's up and down the Wasatch Front. DJ and PK, you can go to thecomplexslc.com for the Ryan Bingham concert tickets. More football, Utes and Cougars with Mac next.
Ladies and gentlemen, may I present...
This is JJ and Alex.
Let's say they do make the college football playoff this year for the first time and they win that Big 12 championship. That will have been 2 Pac-12 championships and a Big 12 championship in 4 years. You don't want to keep riding that wave? You're killing it recruiting. You're bringing in guys. I think the challenge would be, what do you do post-Cam Rising? The challenges remain. A national championship would remain. Kyle Whittingham keeps checking boxes during his career, and everyone says you can't do this, you can't do that. Well, 1 Pac-12 championships back-to-back. Now he has a chance to win a Big 12 championship. Cross that off the list. What's next? College football playoff, cross that off the list. Semifinal, cross that off.
Catch JJ and Alex afternoons from 3 to 6. Presented by G2G Bars on 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.
DJ PK brought to you in part by Tim Dolly Mazda Southtown. Find your new Mazda at the south end of the valley at Tim Dolly Mazda Southtown. That's Tim Dolly Mazda Southtown in Sandy. Ron McBride in studio talking college football with us. He's also pumping up the concert with Ryan Bingham from the show Yellowstone. Ryan Bingham and the Texas Gentlemen are going to be at the Complex Saturday, June 22nd. You can get your tickets at thecomplexslc.com. Benefits the Ron McBride Foundation with all the proceeds benefiting after-school programs for at-risk kids and youth in Title I schools. Mac is working with schools up and down the Wasatch Front. And as we documented in the last segment, he's also got former players on coaching staffs everywhere, including multiple guys you got ties to at BYU. Yeah. So, is BYU, last year the quarterback injury, that was a big hit in their season. But I think undersold was the fact the running back they were counting on got hurt too, so it really hamstrung the offense. Now, you got ties to the new O-line coach. With the O-line and the running backs, when you coach, you want a dominant run game. Are they going to have an aggressive, powerful, productive run game at BYU?
Yeah, well, TJ, the offensive line coach, is first of all, he's excellent, and he wants the group to be physical and attacking. And in all their drills that they work on, if you watch them closely, I mean, their combos, they work on them really being tight, and the fact they've added some things to the run game that they haven't had before, and plus I think he does a real good job of teaching it. So and the kids are and the players are buying into what he's teaching.
You think an offensive line coach can make that big of a difference?
Definitely.
How much is it on the players, though?
Yeah, definitely. But the technique and the belief is huge. Make these kids believe that they're good, believe that they can be better, and get them to buy into the whole process.
You've seen their quarterback, McKay Hillstead. I never thought of you as a real lover and admirer of quarterbacks. You'd rather run the ball 70 times than throw it 6. But that aside, the game's evolved, Mac, and McKay is a local guy, and you know a lot of the local high school coaches. So what do you think of his career arc?
I really like him. First of all, he knows how to win, and it's important to him to win, and it's important to him to work at his craft. And so I've watched him in high school, and I watched him when he was up at Utah State. I'm a real fan of that young man and his abilities, and particularly how he thinks.
What do you mean, how he thinks?
Well, he's a football player that's a football player, and he thinks about football, and that's kind of what's a preoccupation for him.
So you're saying he thinks about it 7 days a week?
Yeah.
He's not the guy who just dials in for the game.
Yeah, and he has certain goals for himself that he wants. And he's one of those kids that looks at what he has to do, and that's what he's gonna go after it.
Do you think he's big enough to take the pounding? Not necessarily height-wise. That's a separate question. You can address that if you want. But also the weight and the strength to take the hits that come with.
Well, you never know. You know, like Cam Rising is not the most physical-looking kid, you know, but he does a good job at taking hits, and it's cost him because he's and I think with that kid, I think he's athletic enough where he can avoid some things, and you know, I just think he's a very solid competitive player.
In Hillstead's case, you got one quarterback who's been in the program for over a year, another one who got there and was participating in the spring ball. What does Hillstead need to do to be able to make up the difference to put himself in a position to compete once camp starts in August?
It's going to be the summer. What he does every day during the summer. Is he in there watching film? Is he sitting down with the quarterback coach? And is he sitting down and is he working with the receivers? You know, is he going out there every day? Hey, you want to throw today? And, you know, just
of what you said about him, I assume the answer to all those things is yes.
Yes. Yeah, I would say absolutely yes.
Yeah. Now, at the University of Utah, the assumption is Utah is going to be very good, rightly so. I think they'll be picked to win the league. There are other good teams in the league, but do you think that they have an Achilles heel, a weakness that can be exploited by the rest of the league, or do you think Kyle has a really complete team up there?
As long as they don't get major injuries, I think they're a very solid group of players. I don't see, I think once they get Barton back at linebacker, and I think another one of their linebackers were hurt in the spring, at Barton, it makes a huge amount of difference because he can do so many things well, and plus he's long and he can run, so he'll just add a cherry on top of the cake defensively, and plus he's a good leader to boot. I like their. I think they have pretty good edge guys. That can, and then inside, I think they got maybe 4 or 5 guys that are really solid and are not going to get pushed around. But I think the biggest improvement when you watched them in the spring, on the one-on-one protection, all those combo things, I thought the offensive line was very good. They were doing a good job on their pass sets, they're doing a good job with their hands, and they look like the young tackles that they have are going to be very good players. The Garcia kid, Fano, there's another young man from Arizona. I think those guys are all really good players with nice futures.
Do they have a lead back? Because we know historically they've done really well when they've had lead backs rushing for 1,000 yards. I'm not sure I can identify one who's going to take over the job.
Well, they've got 5 guys. They're all good players. And as a running back coach, he told me, I said, how's your group? And he said, I got 5 guys and I got 1 guy that's special. And he didn't say which guy is special because we didn't get any further into the conversation. But that was kind of his quote on that day. But the Mitchell kid is kind of a downhill guy, a goal line guy. I like the kid from Alabama. I think he's a kind of a bounce around guy and has always got a good forward body lean. And then the kid has been around a long time. He knows the offense. He knows the protections, and he's not going to make a mental error.
Bernard.
Yeah, Bernard.
He's a good receiver, too.
Yeah, so he's very valuable to him because he can do so many things. But they do have one guy that there's, in fact, talking to one of the linemen, there was one back, and I forget the kid's name. He said, this kid has got unbelievable speed, and he's a younger player. And he says that this kid is like lights out, speed-wise, and not a real big guy, but he's really, really impressive.
Do you have a good read on the Big 12 and how Utah fits in the Big 12 and who might challenge them?
Yeah, well, it's a different league because there's more power type, more teams that are built like Utah in that league than there were in the Pac-12. So it's going to be a little different physically because now you're going to have people that are going to challenge you from a physical standpoint. I like Oklahoma State. I like Kansas. I like Kansas State. Oklahoma State, I think, they're going to spend any amount of money that they...
Yeah. You coached at the University of Arizona and have had ties to people down there.
Yeah.
They were clearly on the way up. That was a good season, such a good season. I got their coach the Washington job. So despite the coaching change, does progress continue with the Wildcats, or do you think they take a step back?
Well, as a matter of fact, I've been on the phone with Josh Oglesby, the offensive line coach, quite a bit because he's another guy that, I worked with at different places and really good teacher. And then, of course, the quarterback is special. He's a real player. In fact, he called me when they were in Utah recruiting, and we talked about their spring, talked about the things. He really likes his offensive line. He thinks they're going to be very good. They've been able to hold on to most of their key players. And then Dwayne Aquina is the defensive coordinator, and I think he's a really good coach. I worked with him at Arizona many years ago, and then Chuck Cecil's there, and so they've got a lot of guys that they brought from San Jose, plus guys that they kept there that were Arizona people. They do like their football team.
No, you got that wrong. Arizona sucks, and they'll always suck.
Well, I know where you are with that, but hey, the scum devils, as we used to call them, So, but you guys got some problems over there.
Well, we're working on it. You got to give it a little bit of time.
Well, how many coaches you want to go through?
Well, we finally got somebody who's from there, coached in high school ball, worked his way up. You just hold on, give a little bit of time. I'm going to make this statement.
Okay.
In 3 years, the best ham in the Big 12 is going to be Dillingham, not Whittingham. How about that?
Oh, come on, PK.
He's counting on Kyle. He's counting on Kyle retiring in 3 years.
Yeah.
That's what he's counting on.
But
Matt can't even keep his
PK.
Matt can't even keep his train of thought after that.
Yeah, oh my God.
He did. Interesting conversation though. PK was at the last Pac-12 media day.
Okay.
And PK had some kind of interaction with Kyle and knew that, and Dillingham knew that PK knew Kyle and saw him, and Dillingham said, "I want to be him.
Yeah.
I want to have that kind of success and have that kind of run at one school, not be the coach who bounces to a new job every 4 years."
But yeah, I believe. Well, he's an Arizona guy,
right?
Right.
Yeah, and that's where he wants to be. Now he's changed coordinators again, and Royal, right?
Royal. He went from Baldwin to Arroyo, the former UNLV head coach and Oregon OC.
Yeah. And Baldwin was, he was the head coach at Cal Poly, and then he was at Cal and at Northern
Eastern Washington.
Yeah, Eastern Washington, yeah. and he's really a pretty bright guy, But obviously, there are inconsistencies.
Kyle changed offensive coordinators. He said he wanted to be like Kyle. Kyle was going through offensive coordinators left and right for a while. So, maybe it's like on the surface you question it, but then you look at it and you think, well, the parallels are there.
Well, let's put it this way. Andy fits Kyle's personality.
Right. Because there's a lot of trust there, right?
Yeah. So, and Andy is he's a football guy, and that's all he thinks about, and that's what he does. He likes to watch the film by himself. He likes to analyze it. He'll be there before everybody else, and he'll leave later than everybody else. And Andy's very conservative, and doesn't talk a lot. Just he's all about business.
All right, we got to take a break here, Mac. Final word with Mac coming up. Last segment of the show next. Ron McBride is here talking about the concert his foundation is putting on. Ryan Bingham with the Texas Gentlemen. You may recognize Ryan Bingham from the show Yellowstone. He's in that. And the benefit concert at the Complex on Saturday, June 22nd will benefit the Ron McBride Foundation, and all the money goes to after-school programs for at-risk kids and youth in Title I schools. Jordan District, the Salt Lake District, Ogden District, the Granite District. He's working with a lot of schools up and down the Wasatch Front. And we'll tell you more about that next, right here on The Zone.
And it's all over almost here.
Don't go nowhere.
DJ PK, it's 97.5 The Zone, wrapping up the 9 o'clock hour with Ron McBride, former Utah and Weber State football coach. Now he's got players coaching everywhere. And you have a foundation, Ron. And you got a concert coming up Saturday, June 22nd at the Complex, an intimate evening with Ryan Bingham with the Texas Gentlemen. Ryan Bingham acting in the Yellowstone show, and also he's got the concert thing going. If you're into country music, this could be your thing right here. And I've always been intrigued with your foundation. You were, it's actually, you're here in studio on the radio show. You were in studio one day when our studios were across the street in the Delta Center, and you had this whole handful of papers. And you're like, David, I'm starting a foundation. You're going to be on the board. Sign this.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
That was how I got asked, the presumptive ask. But what threw me on that, and I find it really interesting, is when I heard that, I thought, well, it'll be something to do with college sports or maybe with high school kids. Work with a little younger kids where you have a little more say because schools kind of take over at the college level. And then you told me, after you made me sign, that you were going to work with elementary school kids. And I remember thinking, what's Matt going to do that for? But that was what I asked you. And then you went into the whole story about how you recruit these high school kids, but they get off track in elementary. And you would see high school kids that they had the talent that you wanted to recruit, but you knew that they couldn't fit in the group and do the schoolwork and be part of a group, that they were just really off track. Yeah. And so that kind of struck me. But for people wondering why after school programs, that's your...
So yesterday we had a track meet out at the track. It was over...
Is this at the track you built at Glendale?
Yeah, the track we built at Glendale. Over 200 kids out there, all the principals from the schools. And it was so much fun. And the kids had so much fun. And in talking to the principals, I said, how's the year going? And they said, it's the happiest I've seen our kids, Nice. And they had so much fun out there yesterday. And thanks to Kim Gardner and people like him that helped us build that track.
Kim Gardner wrote some really big, very generous checks.
Oh, my God. I tell you, I love Kim Gardner. If he wanted me to be a servant, I'd be a servant. But,
you were the waiter, Trey, bringing in the I need a pen. I'll go get you a pen.
Hey, what do you need? You need me to drive you someplace? I'll do it. Of course, nobody wants to ride in a car with me anymore. But that dude, I can't believe what a good human being he is. And
when I say kids get off track, that can mean a lot of things, which I guess is probably why I said it, not to give up anybody's circumstance and all that. But one thing that really hit me was getting to know you, and you knew I'd grown up in San Diego, going to San Diego State games, and you were trying to tell me how you recruited a running back that you thought was really good, which it turned out he played in the NFL, so you were right. but you were having problems tracking him down because he was homeless and he lived in a railroad car.
He sure did, yeah. There was a kid that ended up going to San Diego State.
And then I figured out who it was. It had to be David Deacon Turner, and it was.
It was
yeah.
David
and he played
Deacon
with the
Turner.
Bengals later on.
Yeah. So, yeah.
But the point of that is that kids are going through a lot, and we know they're going through a lot, but a lot of kids are going through a lot more than that. And when you're homeless and raising yourself and fending for yourself and living in railroad cars, he was in the Central Valley somewhere, right?
Yeah,
Was that Bakersfield, maybe?
Yeah, Bakersfield.
It was
exactly.
Bakersfield,
Yeah. And then, and then Nate Orchard, he had the same situation growing up, when he was a kid. And, and it's just, it's really...
You told me some story about recruiting a kid, and I think maybe you were in San Jose, and you would drive him. You were worried that he just wasn't going to go to high school.
Yeah.
And you would pick him up and drive him to school.
Yeah,
and you go through the drive-in and get him, was like an Egg McMuffin or something for breakfast?
Yeah.
Because this is a kid who, like a lot of kids, doesn't eat.
Yeah. Joe Mosley, and so, I would pick him up every morning, get him out of bed.
You'd literally go in his house.
I'd go right in the house and I'd throw the covers off of him and get him out.
Let's go. You don't get to sleep the day away.
It's time to go. Oh, I got to go today. Yeah, you got to go today. Get in the car. Let's go. Buy him a McDonald's on the way and then make sure he got home.
Wow. Good stories. Well, you're doing good work, Mac. And the foundation is wildly successful. And I can remember when it went to six figures, and then it went to $250,000, and then it went to $500,000. A lot of these schools are getting $10,000 and $15,000 grants to run their after-school programs, to help run their after-school programs.
And the big thing is we took this is a little bit chancy on the concert because something we haven't done.
Mm-hmm.
So we got to make sure that we sell it out. We got to make sure that this is something that everybody enjoys, And in addition, to Ryan Bingham, obviously we have Braden Farley from Alabama, who's a Crimson Tide guy. And then the addition, Tali Olave, who played for me at Utah, is the number one Western singer in Hawaii at this time, and just did a big thing in Nashville, and he is so talented. I mean, and the Texas Gentlemen, the people that work with Ryan, they are famous on their own. So this is going to be a really big. It's going to be a big time concert.
June 22nd. It's a Saturday. Tickets are available at thecomplexslc.com. Thecomplexslc.com. Ryan Bingham with the Texas Gentlemen. And all the money raised will help support after-school programs up and down the Wasatch Front in the multiple school districts that Ron McBride and his foundation are working at. And I think the last thing before we go that people don't know about you is like you aren't sitting on the sofa. You literally get in a car with the one person you can find who isn't scared to ride with you, and you go to all these schools, and you know all the principals, and you walk in and participate in the after-school programs while they're going on.
Absolutely. So, and that's what's fun about to see, what your money's going towards.
Yep.
And so that's what's really fun. Yeah. And now that Chinoso's back from. He's been back in New York going to school. Once he's back, I got him he'll be my driver for about a month, So if schools want to apply, they can go to your foundation website, right? If they need a grant to help grow their programs or to support their programs. Although you have to have your stuff together. PK, last story, you're going to love the story. You ready? So doing Super Bowl carrying stuff, I go to different schools for food stuff, right? And you do get a vibe when you're there about the schools that are better run and schools that aren't. We got 1,000 schools in Utah. Some of them are great. Some of them don't quite measure up. And I'm at one school. I don't even want to say what district's in, but I'm at one school, and I just thought the principal was kind of weird. I didn't think it was kind of the warm, you got all these volunteers coming in. I didn't think it was the welcoming they should have got. I didn't like it. So fast forward like a year, and I'm sitting in a board meeting for Max Foundation, and one of the other board members brings up that school. Right.
And says, hey, this school, they're applying on that. And Max says, I kid you not, PK, that school is bleep. That principal is bleep, except it's not bleep. It's like he's on the sideline talking to a referee who spotted the ball wrong on 3rd and 1. He's just blurting it out. Yeah, so you better have your ducks in a row.
Well, you could you could tell when you meet with the principal if that principal is engaged with what's going on and has a plan. And the nice thing about yesterday at the track meet, the principal at I think it's Northwest Middle School. She is so excited about her kids, and the people from Glendale, they're so excited about their kids, and they had so much fun watching their kids run. And the principal's over there, and she's standing at all the finish line, right? Oh, there goes Herman further and faster, and congratulating the kids after every race, and the same thing with Lucas, and it was so much fun because all their parents were out there watching. So you had the parents, you had the principals, you had the kids, you had the athletic directors. They're all invested in these young people having fun.
Mac, you're doing good work. Ryan Bingham with the Texas Gentlemen. Go to the concert on June 22nd. It's a Saturday. Tickets at theComplexSLC.com. Mac, thanks for coming in. We got to run. We're out of time. We've run a little over. You're the man.
Okay. How's our man down in St. George? Is he good?
He's awesome.
Is he?
He's awesome.
He's a good man. He's playing pickleball today. Maybe.
Jake and Ben are coming up next. Mac's giving up all the secrets right here on The Zone.